charge on them, folks.
Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
What's up, everybody? A pleasant good evening to you all. Welcome, dissidents, to the Do Dissidents podcast. My name is Keaton Weiss, here, of course, with Russell Dobular.
I have transitioned back. Hello.
Yes, transitioned back. The detransitioned Russell Dobular. That was quick. That was some powerful hormones, and,
It turns out they are fully reversible.
Yeah, there you go. So what the fuck you worried about?
That's it.
Yeah.
I've turned around on this whole thing now that I've actually experienced it for myself.
Right, exactly. I tell you, it has been a hectic day for me, even though it's Sunday. For those fans of the show, know I am moving to Albany in just a couple of weeks. And so in the few days that my wife Amanda has off between now and then, we really have to hustle out and get this move together. So it was a really, really full day for me. Russell, do you mind giving me a little ring of the singing bowl to calm me down?
Oh, boy. All right. We got Scream Kids in the background there.
Yeah, I know. They're having a tough time because they're not allowed to sleep in our bed.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that may have filtered them out a little bit. What do you think?
That doesn't sound like I keep telling you, puberty blockers, man.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Makes them sleep like babies.
Exactly.
Knocks them right out.
How's your internet coming in? You look a little blurry to me. Or is that the... There we go. Now you look better.
Yeah.
Now you look a little better.
Maybe it's that my face is blurry today.
Yeah.
maybe I'm out of focus.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like David Lynch. I'm halfway into the Black Lodge dimension.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, it has been very much a hectic time, that's for sure. My kids are having a little bit of difficulty going to sleep because they're not allowed to sleep in our bed tonight. They were sleeping in our bed the last few nights. I don't even remember really exactly why that is, but they're not allowed to sleep in our bed tonight because they weren't behaving. So they're being disciplined, and it sucks that I can't be there to discipline them. See, now they're getting to the age of discipline. That age of 4 where they really understand what you're talking about now. Now there's really kind of no excuse not to listen. So now this is the age where you really got to figure out, okay, how am I going to get them to understand you do what the fuck we want, right?
I mean, in my neighborhood, they generally dealt with that with abusive alcoholism.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
I mean, it got the job done for the time being, but it had a lot of long-term psychological consequences for the kids.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, we try
They
not
grow up to be very flaky adults.
I mean, look, I'm all for, I'm all for negative discipline. I think Amanda's school of thought is a little bit more positive than mine, which makes sense. She's a more positive person than I am, obviously. But, we'll figure it out. Patrick Donahue says, "Hi, lads." Thank you, Patrick. It's your Irish friend. Nearly bedtime for me, but loved your takedown of Kyle's defense of Marianne Williamson. It was poetry in motion. What a show. Well, thank you, Patrick. We appreciate that.
Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Tusker is very supportive. Thank you, Tusker. I support however you choose to identify. And everyone hit the like button to show your support for Russell as well. All right. So
I'm actually home appliance gendered. I identify as toaster and blender. Those are my pronouns.
Toaster / blender. Exactly.
It's very rare. It's very rare.
Yeah.
Most people cannot figure out how to use those in a.
So, folks, we have some big news this week. We are entering production for our documentary film on Jose Vega. We are shooting that this week, and so we are very, very excited about that. We hope to have some sneak preview footage for our Patreon members and paid Substack subscribers. So if you head over there and subscribe, you can get some access to some early materials there. What's that?
He's already on all brand. He's like 50 pounds over the weight he was supposed to be by the time of the shoot. He hasn't memorized his lines.
Right.
It's really he's turning out to be problematic.
I actually haven't given him the questions yet, our interview questions. I have to actually message him those after tonight. Devin Doyle, thank you very much for the $4.99. Keaton, we know Russell wrote Satanism novel, but we know that you're a blues artist on the side. Any recordings of your music or multiple wives? Well, I only have one wife, and no, I do not have any recordings of my music. I never really took music as seriously as perhaps I should have. I always loved playing music, but I never formed a band. One of the reasons I never formed a band, so this is an old Jewish man's reason for not forming a band. Too much schlepping. And I mean schlepping not just in terms of driving, but in terms of packing and loading vehicles and then unloading when you get to the venue and then loading back up and then unloading when you get home and packing it back into the garage or wherever you are. It seems like for every minute you're on stage, there's like 10 minutes of torture and manual labor that you have to endure. So that's why I never did it. Are you there, Russell? You froze.
You got me? Do you have me?
Your image is frozen. I get your sound. Yeah, your internet's a little shaky tonight, I gotta say. It's coming through a little.
I've been having increasing problems with it. It hasn't been affecting my computer.
Yeah, just close out of any other windows that you might have open. That's a big thing too.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Susan, love your show. Well, thank you, Susan. Appreciate that very much. Thank you so much for the donation. That's very, very kind of you guys. Yeah, so like I said, we are making this film, Abiding 71. Thank you for the super sticker. All these donations, Patreon subscriptions, they all help a great deal. It's very important to help keep the operation afloat and help me find a daycare or a night care for my kids to send them to, so in case they cry. Or, well, actually at this new apartment, I'll be kind of on the other side of the apartment, so it'll be more soundproof. It's cool in that way. The setup is really nice. Here, we're all 3 bedrooms right on top of each other, so you can kind of hear everything.
Machiavelli, baby. It's better to be feared than loved, especially by your children.
Yeah. Exactly. Only lobbyists and escorts move to Albany. Well, it's against my policy to be a lobbyist, long story short, so maybe there's a new career that I have ahead of me. Thank you for the donation. I appreciate that very much. Yes, Keaton's a lazy musician. That's exactly right. That's 100% right.
Right.
Meteor Dreams. Is Katie Halper also a Marianne Williamson show? I haven't heard the Katie Halper show in a long time.
I don't know. Is she?
I don't know. I haven't heard the Katie Halper show in a very long time. But thank you for the donation, Meteor
She
Dreams.
don't likes watching. And Aaron seems like somebody who would not have 20 seconds of patience from Aaron.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Judging her.
Yeah. Your video is coming through pretty lousy now. Do you want to exit and try coming back in?
All right.
All right, Russell's gonna exit and try coming back in. Sorry about this, folks. We apologize. Russell says his internet has been acting up on him lately, so he will come back in just a moment. But we do have some topics that we are going to cover tonight. We have a few headlines to get to. Then, of course, our three marquee stories are Donald Trump and his campaign's response to his indictment and his coming arraignment, which will be on Tuesday afternoon in New York City. Russell is, of course, planning to go there and shoot some footage on his selfie stick and maybe interview some of the deplorables who will be there showing their support for Donald Trump. So that'll be fun. We also have the TikTok ban. We have been perhaps a little debate on the TikTok ban as we teased last week, which, by the way, Tusker is in the audience here. Give Tusker another round of applause for doing a great job filling in last Thursday along with our friend Colin Radix Carter. That was a really, really fun show. We're going to be talking about that tonight with the Restrict Act. And then, of course, we have Cenk Uygur responding to the Nashville shooting in a way that somewhat contradicts a statement he made before the Nashville shooting. We thought that was an interesting piece of footage, and so Russell cut together some of that. There he is. He's back. We'll give this another shot. It's still a little shaky, but we'll see. We'll make the best of it.
I'm going to have Spectrum come. This is, the second time within a year that I need to have Spectrum come?
Yeah. Well, I remember it was... Hold on one second. I'm sorry. My wife just asked me, how long do I hold my ground for and not give in? I said, give in because we can hear him. Just give in right now.
Just give
Surrender.
in. Exactly.
Surrender.
Exactly.
Stand down. Stand down.
Stand down.
Exactly. We'll do it tomorrow, right? We'll do it next time.
That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
Train them when we're not on the air.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And when we're not on the air, of course, I'll have time to help as well.
Exactly.
Leslie Watts, thank you for the $10. Also love your show here in sunny Queensland. Oh, okay. So that's from far away. See, we got, like I said, Queensland. Where is that? That's Australia, right?
How do we sleep while our heads are burning? I know 2 songs from Australia, like most people, and one actor, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So okay, I got to answer this.
Yeah, sure.
Whoops. It went by too fast for me. Here we go. All right. So, Spectrum has actually been ranked one of the worst companies to work for. I think it's actually been ranked as number 1 worst company in the past. And everyone hates them with the white hot light of 1,000 burning suns. In fact, I have the good fortune to be 1 block away where other service providers are available. I am in this block where there is no other option. I have to go with Spectrum here.
Yeah, I know that Spectrum used to be Cablevision in New York, and that was like the monopoly. Like everybody had to get Cablevision. Like when I was a kid, for cable TV, it was all Cablevision. You had no choice. My grandparents in the Bronx had Cablevision. Everybody in the city who I knew had to go through them. And then they became absorbed by Time Warner, and then that obviously became Spectrum. So yeah, it is a monopoly town. It's pretty brutal, Russ. You may want to try to switch to your phone because it keeps cutting out pretty bad.
Really?
Yeah. It was weird because before we went on the air, we weren't having this problem. Dave Dillerai, $10. Thank you very much, Dave. We appreciate that. My dogs think there are wolves or coyotes outside. Do they sound like... Yeah, they are howling a bit, are they not? It's funny. Thank you guys for the super chats. You guys seem to you get the donations going when we're not doing a show, when we're stalling for time, sorting out our technical difficulties and our family difficulties. So thank you very much for your understanding. Russell, do you want to try with your phone?
I don't. Would you have to send me a link? I don't even know if I can get in that way.
Oh yeah, I would have to text you a link to do it that way. Let me see here. Sorry, guys. That Spectrum. Yeah, Mika. That Spectrum. Gamer. Yep, it sucks. All right. So, yeah, Russell, if you want to try on your phone, how's your battery on your phone? Okay. All right. You know what we're going to do, guys? I'm going to put the music back on for 5 minutes. We're going to be right back when we try to figure this out. I apologize. We'll be right back.
Maybe I should try to for that.
How's your phone better?
Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello again. Let's try this again, shall we? Thank you guys for sticking with us. We apologize for that. Nothing we could do. It's just an internet issue here. So we are at the mercy of Spectrum tonight.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's turning into a third world country.
Yeah. At the mercy of big tech. Oh, this is my dad. Thank you for the $5, Dad. He said, let the kids come on the air and make their case for why they should get to sleep in the room. Well, tonight it looks like she gave in. The terrorists won. What can I say? We're a couple of Chamberlains over here.
You negotiated with terrorists.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they won. All right, let's start the goddamn show before we lose the internet again. What do you say about that?
Let's do it.
All right. So first segment of the night, obviously on the day that Matt Taibbi was set to testify before the weaponization of the government subcommittee, IRS agents visited his home. And Janet Yellen was actually asked about this by a congressman from the state of Utah. And it was very, very suspicious. Like I said, very strange day today all over the internet. We found a clip of this, the sound of which was just not playing. So I don't know if it was encrypted, if Forbes magazine doesn't want to share their stuff. So we were sound checking before the show,
it's
making
American
sure all the clips
Carnage.
were in order. Yeah, American Carnage, right. And all of a sudden, like, the clip would not play no matter what we did because it was all sourced from that same clip. So I don't know if it was encrypted or this is an error in their video. But luckily for us, though, our great friends over at Fox News, friends of the show, Fox News, wonderful network, wonderful channel. They do a great job. They're really on top of
They work
things.
very hard over there. I don't think anyone knows how hard they work.
They work very hard. They're very fair, very balanced.
Very fair and balanced. That's their motto. Not as much as me, but not everybody can be as good as me.
No, they're very fair to me. Once I whip them into shape. Once
I had to make a call. I had to talk to some people there, but we got it straightened out.
So here you go. You'll get the gist of this here. Janet Yellen denying any knowledge of the IRS visit to Matt Taibbi's home on a very, very, very suspiciously timed occurrence.
The chances of that being just luck, that the IRS appeared at someone's home while he's testifying about weaponization of federal government before Congress.
It's certainly something that I would want to look into. I'm not aware that IRS agents do that, except, as you said, in cases where there's an investigation
that's exactly right.
for law breaking that's underway.
Yeah, so apparently this was an identity verification issue. Apparently there was no outstanding debt from these years. So it was just a very suspicious thing because the IRS is not known to make house calls for fairly obvious reasons, probably most importantly, the safety of the IRS agents, right?
Yeah.
But
it's a good way to get mauled by a Doberman.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very, very rare happening. But I think the question that he asked is the question that was on everyone's mind, which is, you excuse this away all you want. What are the odds that this could have been a coincidence? I mean, it's almost impossible.
Zero. Close to zero. There's absolutely no way that was a coincidence. My theory No. Do I think Yellen got on the phone and said, Taibbi is testifying, send an agent to his house? No. I think someone like Crazy Eyes, who you did that great video on about how it's because of people like this that there's just no point in running candidates in the Democratic Party. I think some functionary like that who works in the IRS decided on their own initiative, go harass Matt Taibbi. Like, there's no way it's not connected. Do I think the people at the top really gave the order to send an IRS agent to his house? Probably not. I believe Yellen did not.
Oh, yeah, I don't think she knew. Yeah,
I think some functionary in the IRS, some middle management person in the IRS made that call.
And you would do that and not pass knowledge up the chain of command because they're the ones going to get asked about it, and you want them
like
to
the
have,
mafia.
Yeah, exactly. Plausible and legitimate deniability. So, well, I don't know. I didn't do it. By the way, that Crazy Eyes woman that you mentioned, she goes by Politics
Girl. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it has come out since that she is basically like a version of that Brooklyn Dad Defiant account on Twitter. Like, she is a paid personality. Like, she actually gets some money.
She's a cutout.
So it's a pro. And people were like, well, there, you see, so she doesn't represent the average Democratic voter because she's a pro. She's being paid. I'm like, well, no, that actually makes my point even stronger because what that means is there's actually a marketing department behind her and that show. Like, they are specifically modeling the sets and the personality to reflect the composition of their most influential voters, right? Like, the idea that was a deliberate choice to put her in that kitchen with the costume and the whole presentation, the fact that was actually contrived to as a way of outreach to their hardcore base, to me, that makes the point even more. It's like, okay, this was actually designed to mirror what the Democrats know is their core voter base.
It is kind of fascinating, though, that they put a fake personality that looks so much like one of these nuts.
Well, it's well done. I mean, that's
good
marketing. Yeah,
that's completely plausible. That she's some kook from Miami-Dade.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You're right. Wherever she's from, it's a totally plausible set. Totally plausible personality. They got the lingo down. Like, it's great marketing. Absolutely. 100%.
I mean, it did look to me like it was rehearsed, but you do have these people who build their channels who take it to that level. It was clearly scripted. It was clearly not off the top of her head. But I just assumed, I mean, she's interviewing Buttigieg. This is her money. She's actually putting that effort into it.
Right. Absolutely. So in global news, Kamala Harris visited Africa over the past week, and we have a truly fantastic piece of video that we want to play for you guys. Russell, do you want to set this clip up for us here?
Okay, so the figure speaking here, he is actually an opposition leader who founded the only independent newspaper in the country. I don't have his name right in front of me. Oh, hang on. Memembe.
Yeah, Memembe, yeah.
Memembe. So he set up the Zimbabwe Post in 1991 because the only two newspapers in the country were both government-run newspapers. Both he and his wife, who's also in journalism, also owns a newspaper, have been repeatedly arrested. The Post was illegally shut down in 2016. He won the International Press Institute's World Press Freedom Heroes Award, naming him as one of the 50 great journalism heroes of their 50 years in existence. So, it actually calls to mind. I think I've seen him say this other places. I think he also said this when we were interviewing him. When Taibbi gets asked how he feels about being treated this way by Congress, he'll often point out, I've lived in countries where journalists face real risks, where they really get arrested. I've known people who got killed. This is somebody who has been arrested multiple times and does live in a country that has very loose press freedoms and a very corrupt government. And nonetheless, he has stood tall as an opposition figure for decades.
Yeah, so here he is on Kamala Harris's trip to Africa. This went viral. It's not easy for an African leader to go viral, right? Because we don't really think too far outside of our borders here in the U.S., so it has to be pretty good to have spread this far. So we'll take a look.
A country that has toppled so many governments in Africa, that has led so many coups in Africa and other parts of the world, a country that has killed so many of our leaders in Africa and other parts of the world, the killers of Patrice Lumumba, those who toppled Kwame Nkrumah, those who killed Nasser, those who killed Muammar Gaddafi, today are coming to teach us about democracy. A country that has been built on brutal force, on enslavement of other human beings, on the humiliation of Africans, the exploitation of Africans, the plunder of Africa, today is coming to teach us about democracy. If you have no respect for the dignity of others, if you have no respect for the sovereignty of other countries, you cannot claim to be a champion of democracy.
So there you have it. There you have it. You know, this reminds me of the growing BRICS alliance. Obviously, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa.
That's what I was just thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. When you talk about the emergence of a multipolar world in which America is no longer the dominant superpower, and I actually saw an interesting chart. I'd have to vet this before I could report this with certainty, but a report that said that the GDP of the BRICS group has now surpassed the total GDP of the G7, which, once again, you talk about the Russia-Ukraine war, you talk about Putin's plan in action. This is it. This is it. It is to create an alternative power structure and an alternative economic structure in the world.
That's it.
To the U.S. and the West. And, you know, it's been asked why so many African countries are backing Russia in this conflict. Well, here you have it, right?
Yep.
We are quite hated around the world in a lot of the non-white areas of the world, which is why it's ironic that, you know, a lot of the wokest libs are the ones who are the most gung-ho for Ukraine. Much of the global South is actually not on our side and have not been on our side in a very long time. And so that's a kind of message that you hear from a real deal thinker about the real world implications of what this country has wrought, not only in his part of the world, but in parts like it. And so, you know, they're not fooled by just a worthless piece of garbage like Kamala Harris coming there and talking nice to them, because she has a similar skin tone to most of the people in his land. They're more, as you might say, woke.
Yes. Well, and it didn't escape their notice that we had not only nothing to say about a de facto genocide in Yemen, we supported the actions in Yemen. All of a sudden, when it was white people in Ukraine,
Right, yeah.
Oh, no, we can't have this. You had the reporter actually went on and said the quiet part out loud. You can't help but think these are people like us who look like us. I mean, it's just amazing. As woke as they are, as soon as shit got real, their real thoughts came out very, very quickly in assessing Ukraine before they got a hold of themselves once again. So yeah, for a very long time, countries around the world have identified not Russia, not China as the greatest threat to world peace, the United States. Why wouldn't they identify the United States as the greatest threat to world peace? Do you see China running around invading countries around the world? Yeah, within its own area. I'm not a supporter of China and its actions in places like Tibet, but nothing like what the United States does. Nothing like what we do around the world, much less Russia. Where does Russia go? Where's Russia gone since the collapse of the Soviet Union? What invasions into Georgia? I mean, again, you're talking about these little regional conflicts within their area, within their sphere of influence, as you might say. You don't see Russia going over to Jakarta.
Right, exactly. And, like this whole project of ours in Ukraine, right? I think the longer it goes on, I think the more countries around the world just understand us for the joke that we really have been for really since the end of World War II. Like, we don't even fight the wars to win the wars. We fight the wars for the sake of fighting the wars, just to enrich the people in our country who are in the war business. Like, we're not a serious power in that way. Right. I mean, we really aren't. So, we never win anymore, as Trump would say. So, like, what are they doing? Like, I don't think there's a sense that the United States even has a direction that it wants to take the world in. Like, I don't think these other countries even see a real vision.
It just wants to maintain its own power.
Right. We're the New York Yankees. Like, we are theoretically the best and biggest and richest country in the world, but we don't win anymore. Just like the Yankees, they don't win anymore.
We're not winning.
Yeah.
Well, our institutions have become so corrupted that they not only are not able to advance the society, they've become predatory. They're a danger to the population. I don't want to scare people or, with apocalyptic visions. One of the reasons I'm doing so much traveling right now, our whole infrastructure, our whole country is falling apart. We're falling into a corrupt idiocracy where I'll tell you, man, in 10 years, I don't want to be on a plane. I don't trust that the planes are going to be safe. I don't trust that the pilots flying them are going to be competent. I don't trust that the engineers designing them are going to put the lives of the people who get on them above juicing the stock price, as we already saw with the Boeing Max. That they knew that plane was unsafe and they let it go up anyway, even after it crashed. And then it crashed again. They kept sending that plane up until the FAA stopped them. And they would not admit that that plane was not safe to fly. Boeing was the mayor in Jaws, just kept putting people in the water, knowing that their lives were in danger. When your institutions are that corrupted, you can't trust anybody. You can't trust anything. You can't trust the food manufacturers, certainly can't trust the pharmaceutical companies. This is what liberals don't get because they are such believers in institutional power and elites. I was having this debate a little bit with a liberal friend of mine who was asking me, what they always say, well, what about Trump? What about the people who support Trump? I said, you know what? At least they've diagnosed the problem correctly. They understand that our institutional powers have become completely corrupted and no longer a help to us, but a hindrance, but a predatory entity. They've just picked a solution I don't agree with. But at the same time, you can't blame them because the Democratic Party made it impossible for them to pick the solution that I did agree with. They took that solution off the table.
Right, exactly. And that's actually a pretty good segue into our third and final headline of the night. But before we do that, we'll disrupt it by taking a couple super chats. Laugh. So 6 equals 8. So your laugh 6. Okay. Good one. I've decided to forgive you for missing my super chat last Sunday. So sleep easy. Oh, well, I'm sorry about that, Laugh. We've been getting much better about that, keeping track of them. If you would like to post whatever it was as a free chat, we'd be happy to read it this time. But thank you for the 5. What are those? £5?
That's
I told
five.
you we have a
That's
lot of
£5. Yeah.
We have a lot of overseas viewers. According to YouTube,
We
this
do.
month
We
in
do.
March, only 65% of our viewers were in the U.S.
Really?
That's pretty low. Yeah.
And then the other 35 are in China and Russia?
Yeah. Well, yeah. The other 35 are at a bot farm somewhere. They're fake. They don't exist. Yeah.
I truly like this show. It is very patriotic American show.
Exactly. Virtuoso, thank you, my man. For 78 years, the U.S. has wasted its unilateral capital on war and exploitation to perpetuate wars for resources. Yep, exactly. I agree with you 100%. 100%. Well, speaking of, let's take this one here. Dave Delarai, thank you. Ralph Nader's granddaughter died on one of those planes in Africa.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. I remember something about that. On one of the Maxes. Yeah.
So when was that? When did that happen? That must not have been that long ago.
That's when the Maxes crashed about 4 years ago.
Yeah, it was about 4 or 5 years ago. That was going to be Russell's first contribution to this show. Fun fact, piece of dissident history. Because I invited Russell to start writing articles for our website back like as soon as we launched, like 2019.
Yeah, I started working on that. I never finished it.
Yeah, you told me your first one was going to be on the Max, and I never got it. So
yeah,
you,
I never did it.
Still owe me that one.
I told you I want to combine that with because there's 2 documentaries on Netflix. One that deals with what happened at Boeing, and one that deals with the medical device industry. And to me, they're related because they're both about how these people that we're supposed to trust literally with our lives have been so captured by the profit motive that they will literally fucking kill you. And there's so much regulatory capture, there's so much government corruption that they'll get away with it. That's that series I told you I wanted to do when I was in India, and I still want to do. People who should be in jail. The CEO of Boeing who let those planes go in the air knowing what he knew. Why is he not in prison? Why is he not in prison? If I go out right now and I kill somebody, I'm going to jail. This guy they should be throwing away the key. He killed hundreds of people with his decisions. That is not something the corporate shield does not protect you from liability in a case of such personal malfeasance in your decision making. You are criminally liable in a case like that. You can still be
criminally liable. Yeah, of course. Of course, absolutely. All right, so third and final headline of the evening here. I thought this was a fun piece of video, and this speaks to what Russell was saying there a few minutes ago. Here's Donald Trump Jr. on the Tim Pool show expressing his newfound support for Julian Assange and Edward Snowden. Let's take a listen here.
People asking about your views on Julian Assange and whether or not he should be pardoned.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. Assange, listen, I years ago when it first started happening, I would have said no. Now, I'm like, oh my God, like he was on this stuff. Again, years ago, I was like, him, the other guy who gave up the military secrets with
Snowden.
What's his name?
Edward Snowden.
Brains running the family.
Yeah. I would have been like, I would have taken the no. That 100%. 100%. You got to let those guys out because they actually caught us doing all the things we said we weren't going to do.
Wow,
they caught us in the lie, and it's out there. And now I've seen what's actually going on. Again, my worldview, the America I believed or wanted to believe existed, that doesn't exist anymore, guys. And every day that's further and further gone, we just are being more and more awakened to the reality of the situation. It's not that it's getting worse. It's probably been really bad for a long period of time.
Yeah, I just had my face buried in a prostitute's ass, sniffing coke out of it for 40 years. I didn't see. I didn't realize. Yeah, whoa, fucked up place out here. What was going on? Whoa. I took my head over. Whoa, what's going on out there? Holy shit.
We just now know it, and we're seeing it with our own eyes.
I don't think
so.
Yeah, I don't think that's an easy question to answer. But there were a lot of people in chat saying,
I think my mind has changed on that a lot. Even when we first got into politics, I'd have been like, no, that's a bad thing. We can't have that. But I'm like, now?
Everybody's cheering now, though. They're like, yeah.
Well, this is a really interesting bit because, you hate to use terms as complex as evolution when it comes to Donald Trump Jr., but his evolution really does mimic the political trajectory of the average person. Starting, and it's funny that Edward Snowden and Julian Assange are used as the examples here because obviously WikiLeaks became most infamous for its Iraq War revelations. And 20 years ago, the normie American was a patriotic, flag-waving, jingoistic dupe, I would argue. I try not to be cynical, but, Iraq War being what it was pretty obvious to me as a dumb 16-year-old that it was a horrible idea going in. But anyway, they underwent a similar transition that he did over the years.
You think you had it bad. I grew up with well, then why don't you go to Russia?
Right. yeah, exactly.
That was everybody's answer if you had any objection to the American project. Why don't you go live in Russia?
Yeah, go live in Russia.
Go live in Russia.
Exactly. But that's what it was. And, here it was, it was the same thing. Well, yeah, I guess you love Saddam. I guess you should go work for the Taliban, stuff like that. And now here those same Americans are 20 years later who are just deeply, deeply cynical and skeptical of all of these institutions. Now, you could, of course, point to Donald Trump Jr. and say, well, is it not the real reason that you are all of a sudden sympathetic to Assange and WikiLeaks is because they embarrassed the Democrats in 2016 and sort of helped you guys win? That's certainly extremely possible, to put it mildly. However, I've never accused the Trump family of being sincere. What I've diagnosed there is why they have been able to connect as much as they have, despite having biographies that are just so wildly disconnected from the experiences of average people. Because that same journey from jingoism to cynicism is the journey that most Americans have gone on since 9/11, really. And so, there you have it.
I'm going to speak to this as a fellow Queens boy, as the Trumps are. I've said this before. I don't understand it. I don't get it, because Trump went to elite schools. He wasn't in the public school system. Somehow Trump picked up the attitudes of a guy from a bar in Queens. I grew up, believe it or not, I grew up a few miles from the Trump family home in Jamaica Estates. And Donald Trump is a very familiar personality type to me, being from that neighborhood. If you had walked into a bar in my neighborhood when I was growing up, there would have been 5 guys like Donald Trump sitting at the bar drinking a beer, holding court, with very much the same views. For whatever reason, the Trump family, in spite of its wealth and privilege, has managed to stay connected to the views of the average working class person. I honestly don't understand how that happened, but as
I mean, it could just be that they are very, very conflict oriented in the way that working people tend to be very conflict oriented, right? Because it's a tough life, right? You're always ready for a challenge, right? You're always ready for an obstacle, right? Like every day is such a grind.
Yeah, but with Trump himself, I can't speak to the kids. I haven't watched them as much. Trump's whole cultural style is a guy from Queens. That
I know.
is very Queens.
No, I know, but I think maybe it's that.
Yeah, I came down that gold escalator. Even that speech was very Queens. Like that weird, like, hey, I'm no racist, but let's face it, some of them are up to no good. It's a very Queens tack to take, right?
Yeah.
For like, I'm not saying they're all bad, but some of them,
right? Well, exactly. Right. That's the same kind of plausible deniability that one of those guys would seek in a bar. They would once they realize they're talking too much and too fast, they're like, okay, hold on, let me back this up and put my little like disclaimer in, and then start again.
Nah, I got one of them. He lives in my building. The guy he works night and day. No, he's a great guy, but some of these guys, you see him with the drugs. You see him with the cars, with the rims. What are we bringing these people in for over here? And then they go on the welfare. He's got that whole shtick
that whole thing
down,
right,
and
exactly.
I don't get how he got it, but he got it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, your internet's cracking a little bit. I don't know if you might want to do another restart while I riff for the patrons and stuff, but we'll see how it goes. I could always take another break. It's funny. I was actually thinking of putting up a little "We'll be right back" card for tonight, but I didn't have time to prep it. Like I said, folks.
Okay, I think it might be, for whatever reason, like that modem is breaking down because it started with not getting a signal on the other side of the apartment.
Okay, so maybe it's on its last legs.
Yeah, basically I'm moving the computer closer to it now and hoping the audience doesn't notice. I'm like,
yeah, there you go. You should get an Ethernet cable too. That'll help.
I've got a drawer full of wires. I've definitely got one in there if it came down to it.
Okay. Interesting. Just do the show on the floor. Just put it right next to the. Just lay down.
I'm like slowly creeping this table over to the modem.
Alrighty, so folks, we want to take care of a little bit of business here by plugging our Patreon, where you can help Russell get a new modem, and thanking our current patrons and paid Substack subscribers for helping make this show happen and keep it going. We are obviously, from a technical standpoint, running on fumes this evening, but the show must go on. We're two theater guys, so we will make it work one way or another. Our patrons are the backbone of the show, so you can sign up for as little as $5 a month at patreon.com. You get call-in access to these programs as well as bonus videos every month. You can call in. We have a caller in the studio now. Her name is Ann. I see you there, Ann. I'll give you a little wave. You don't have to call in if you don't like. You don't have to turn your mic on. I know sometimes you just want to watch. Although, Ann, I should tell you, you are the backup host for the night. If Russell ends up not making it, you're on. It's going to be the Keaton and Ann show.
Ann's an OG, man.
Yeah, Ann is an OG. Yeah. We've had a lot of the OGs tune in lately, which is great. Yeah, Ann's been supporting us for a while, and so thank you very much. It's great to see you here. Tusker said she was going to call in for the TikTok segment tonight. I don't know if you're still there, Tusker, but we would love for you to call in there. Here's a second part of our Patreon scroll here. Once again,
and now you know why me and Tusker are never seen at the same time.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's true. You know, when she calls in and you're on the screen, she usually only uses audio.
Yeah.
So maybe it's an impersonator. That could be it.
Well, it's my ventriloquism skills.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true. I never noticed that. I noticed that, especially when the clip is playing. You wouldn't really notice that because our eyes are not on the side. They're on the video. But we have a great crowd in here tonight. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for bearing with us here. We're doing our best with Russ's internet connection here. Please like this stream and subscribe to this channel if you have not already. That makes a big difference. It is a big help. We thank you all for being here tonight. We should also plug our appearance on Tuesday. We're going to be on with our friend Sabby Sabs over on her channel. We're going to be guesting with her on Tuesday night. I believe that's a 7 p.m. start time. I will double check with her, but I'm almost 100% sure that that's a 7 p.m. start. So that'll be a lot of fun. Also, earlier in the day, Tuesday, Russell is going to be yucking it up with the deplorables outside the courthouse. He's going to bring his selfie stick and his camera and try and get some interviews. Try to catch up with Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Six-pack of Miller Lite.
Yeah, some Miller. Yeah, six-pack of Miller Lite. No, you should try to catch up with Marjorie Taylor Greene. She says she's going to be there. Maybe get an interview with her.
Hey, you never know.
That would be fun. That'd be fun. She'd be a great guest. She'd be fun.
She would be.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
get her and Politics Girl together. That's a show.
Oh yeah, there we go. That would be a show. Yeah, I wonder if any of there's going to be I'm imagining some of the libs are going to show up and celebrate, right? I mean, it's New York City, right? There's going to have to be some.
Oh yeah, no, and I'll interview some of them too.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to go to the libs. I'm going to go to the deplorables. So just to let you all know, I'm going to try to find this. It should be there in my photos. I went out when Donald Trump got elected, and I did interviews with both the people who were for and against him protesting outside of Trump Tower in 2016.
The Hilton Hotel was where his
yeah.
That's
no,
but I had
there were protests for days at Trump Tower. Like for 4 or 5 days every night when you went by Trump Tower, there were people protesting over there. And it was very interesting. I spoke to a female Muslim army veteran who was pro-Trump. I had this, I didn't get on camera, but there was this rich kind of Upper East Side lady, and she walks by and she says to me conspiratorially, "Good for him." It was a scene. It was very interesting.
Yeah, that must have been fun. That must have been fun. I was living in Brooklyn at the time. I really regret, one of my biggest regrets is just not going out that night and taking in the scenery, because it was all happening within a few blocks of each other. You had the Hillary defeat over on the West Side
at
Highway,
the Peninsula,
Javits Center.
Yeah.
Well, her hotel was
her
party was at the Javits, and then you had Trump's victory party was at the Hilton on 6th Avenue, which is not that far from the Javits. You can make it there fairly quickly. So that would have been great fun. One thing I want you to ask,
I'll tell you all an untold story of election night. Keaton probably knows this. Okay, so it used to be that presidents stayed at the Waldorf, going all the way back to FDR, down through Barack Obama. Then the Chinese bought it, and the Secret Service put the kibosh on it once the Chinese owned it. So Barack Obama was the last president to stay at the Waldorf. Now it's closed. They're turning it into condos.
Yeah.
Traditionally, president-elects and former presidents, they usually stayed at the Sheraton Manhattan on 7th Avenue.
Oh, really?
Usually at the Sheraton Manhattan.
One of my father's best friends was doorman at that hotel for decades.
Was he?
So he probably had stories.
Well,
yeah.
they used to do the Clinton Global Initiative there too.
Okay.
At the Sheraton Manhattan. So
they changed their name. Now they're not the Sheraton anymore. They're a different hotel.
No, they're the Sheraton.
On 7th Avenue? I thought they changed their name to something else, like the New York Hotel, generic hotel.
No, it's still the Sheraton Times Square over there.
Are you sure? Because, well, maybe it switched back. Because my dad's friend, Joe, he worked there for years. And it was funny because they were changing their name at a time to like the New York Hotel, a generic hotel.
Nah, I just picked people up there.
Well, maybe it's back. But I know they changed it for a while.
Maybe.
And he said when they changed it, he says, the Sheraton's changing their hotel. The Sheraton doesn't want their name on the hotel because they say we're not up to their standards anymore. I said, not up to your standards. You're a fucking Sheraton. Like, you're not the Plaza. You're not the Waldorf. You're a fucking Sheraton.
So Hillary, instead of staying at the Sheraton, she decides to stay at the Peninsula. The Peninsula is right around the corner from Trump Tower. So clearly the plan was that they were going to drive by Trump Tower after she won. And instead, after Trump won, he drove right by the Peninsula because the Hilton is right on the next block on 6th Avenue.
Right,
so he drove like right through the Peninsula. That is classic Hillary. That is just constantly being thwarted like the Wicked Witch. You know?
Right, yeah, exactly. What I want you to tell, I have a question that I want you to ask, and maybe I shouldn't say it on the air because it'll ruin the effect, but whatever. We're hanging out tonight. We're weathering the storm as a community here. We're bonding.
As a community.
Bonding. A little bit of a looser show tonight since we don't know when it's going to end. But I want you to ask a lot of the libs out there who are really happy about Trump finally being indicted, arrested, arraigned. You should ask them. You say, there's a yin and yang to life, though, because how devastated were you that the diagnosed schizophrenic Jacob Chansley was let out of jail early, right? How terrible is that? I mean, how long should he have stayed in for?
Well, I'm also to see if I get cognitive dissonance because the majority of Democrats now approve of him. I'm going to ask them, do you think George Bush should be next?
Oh,
I just want to catch that initial reaction. Oh, is some of them? I promise you, some of them are going to say, "No, he was a decent Republican that I just disagreed with."
Oh yeah, that'll be great.
Trump is different. He's not a criminal like Trump. Right, I promise you, some of them are going to respond that way.
That's a great idea. That's even better than mine. Yeah, I like that. Green light that shit. All right. So anyway, here's got our first main segment of the evening related to what we've been just chatting about here. Donald Trump's arraignment is set for the afternoon of Tuesday, April 4th. In response of news of his indictment, in response to the news of his indictment, his campaign released a 2.5-minute video. And I want to play this because we've been talking a lot about what the sort of effects of the campaign are going to be as a result of this. And here's the Trump campaign just sort of really leaning into this and making a video that's about as defiant as you could imagine. So here we go.
Into the Russia collusion hoax. Durham probe into the Russia collusion hoax.
President Trump has just been impeached on both Article 1 and...
The only president of the United States to be impeached for a second
January
time.
6th committee releasing its final 845-page report.
Former President Donald Trump has been indicted.
Remember this, nothing worth doing ever came easy. Following your convictions means you must be willing to face criticism from those who lack the same courage to do what is right.
Notice the inclusion of Mitch McConnell in that montage there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. To be an outsider, embrace that label. Being an outsider is fine. Embrace the label. Because it's the outsiders who change the world and who make a real and lasting difference. The more that a broken system tells you that you're wrong, the more certain you should be that you must keep pushing ahead.
This is a party that wants an outsider badly.
I continue to believe Mr. Trump will not be president.
You must keep pushing forward. Never, ever give up. There'll be times in your life you'll want to quit, you'll want to go home. I can't do it. I can't do it. Just never quit. You will build a future where we have the courage to chase our dreams no matter what the cynics and the doubters have to say. You will have the confidence to speak the hopes in your hearts and to express the love that stirs your souls. And you will have the faith to replace a broken establishment with a government that serves and protects the people. But they're not coming after me, they're coming after you. I'm just standing in their way. And I always will stand in their way.
So I got to tell you, that ain't bad.
It's a good ad.
That's a good ad.
And I'm going to tell you, for those of you not familiar with the genre, there is a whole genre of like inspirational, very, very kind of masculine oriented, inspirational videos that are kind of like that. You know, where you'll have like Tony Robbins and you'll have, you know, all of these people who are kind of in that space. There are a bunch of people who are not as famous as Tony Robbins who are kind of famous in that space. That's very much in the style of those videos. No matter what, you have to keep going. And you know what? People are going to tell you that you're crazy. You know what? Don't listen to them. Don't listen to them because it's the crazy people who change the world. Right? It's really like it. I would almost say definitively whoever made that was influenced by those videos. Might have made some of those videos for those inspirational speakers because it's totally that style.
I wish I found this chat. It was by Rick Solis, but the chat's moving so fast tonight that I think I lost it. I apologize, Rick. It wasn't a super chat, but he says I'm going to play this commercial every time I have to mow my lawn. And
that's what I'm. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's in that style, but it's very. Yeah, it's slick. It's well done. If you were gonna package Donald Trump as like an inspirational, credible figure, that's about as well as you could do.
Yeah, and you know, it obviously addresses the fact that he's been indicted without making mention of it. You know, it's in the subtext, right? It's in the subtext that, okay, here come the Democrats and the media and the deep state, right? He put Tish James on there. He even put Alvin Bragg's face in there for a second. And, you know, just really defined this as a battle between the entrenched power forces and the populist outside movements. That was the most... That ad, I think, was the most we've seen of the 2016 Trump since 2016, right? And that was something that he couldn't really capture in 2020, not only because of just the horrible circumstances that he was presiding over during that campaign, but also, look, as an incumbent, it's hard to run as an outsider, right? It was just, there's a contradiction there. But here, you know, he seemed to really, you know, regain some of that sort of 2016 populist momentum, or at least try to gin that back up in this way. And, you know, that is how good propaganda is done, right? You make it in response to a specific event, but you don't mention the specific event because you're just sort of using what's going on in the world as sort of subtext for whatever themes and messages you're trying to drive home. And given the timing, obviously, I think, you know, it plays well.
Well, there's a lot going on here. You know, Trump has not been able to recapture this because his own ego did not allow him to hold on to his personal Karl Rove, which was Steve Bannon.
Right.
I have no doubt in my mind Donald Trump would be in his second term right now if he hadn't blown off Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon understood the secret of his success in a way that he himself was not capable of creating on his own.
Right.
Right. He was good at selling it, kind of like Reagan, but Reagan didn't write his own lines. He knew that was not his forte. His forte was delivering them. If he had Steve Bannon to write his lines and to set his policies, he would have cruised into a second term. I'm convinced. And I'm not saying these would have been good policies or it would have been a good presidency for the country, but it would have been much more in line with what he campaigned on. And those were popular ideas, hence his victory. So he would have been doing a second term, I think. So I don't know how much he can get by on ads like this unless he gets himself another Rove, unless he gets himself somebody who can really structure his campaign to be about something other than Donald Trump.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's the question, because obviously you have a team like this that can put together a good 2.5-minute video. But I remember down the home stretch of the 2016 campaign, after he brought in Bannon as his chief strategist, he was obviously a speechwriter for him as well, because you can tell the speeches that Trump was giving, reading the teleprompter, reading, these very Steve Bannon-like passages, and you could kind of tell Trump didn't have much of a clue of what he was saying, but he's enough of a showman, right? He's enough of a pro, right? Read the teleprompter, stand up straight, project. He was able to sell it. And he was on message. Now, as to, whether or not this indictment is going to ultimately propel him to a primary victory, I think it's still way too soon to say that, because now it's very emotional. Yeah, Russ is still saying he's still picking Ron DeSantis.
I think it's good for Trump to be getting wind in his sails right now, because you don't want to peak too early. I think Ron is in a good position that by the time you get to those primaries, he can break away and end up out in front. But Trump has always been lucky in his enemies, because when you watch that video, it's kind of like if you ever saw Hannibal, the sequel to Silence of the Lambs. They wanted to make Hannibal Lecter a hero because he was such a popular character.
Right.
So they introduced an even more repulsive character to play against him so that he could look heroic by comparison. Friend of the show, Kyle Kalinske, did something very similar last week with David Pakman, where he did a video defending Pakman. How did he do it? By bringing in Candace Owens as a foil against Pakman so that he could make Pakman look better by comparison. I didn't see anyone in that video that I like better than Donald Trump. I didn't see anyone that he used as a foil that didn't work for him, because you said, I kind of like that person. No, they're all such repulsive creeps.
Right.
That works. That's a big part of how he got elected. He's always been very lucky in his enemies.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I mean, look, that is not only a matter of him being lucky in who his enemies are, but it's also, that is a reflection of where we are in terms of who is in these positions of power, who are the figureheads that represent the structures that he is sort of represents a real opposition to. So yeah, I mean, it all sort of came together quite perfectly then. And, like I said, I'm still kind of with you in the sense that I don't think this is a signal that he's going to walk away with it. There's some people even the Babylon Bee put the satire out, right? Or something. It was one of those rags that they put out that, whatever. What was it? They're moving to reelect Trump or something like that.
Yeah, the New York DA's brilliant plan to elect Trump in 2020.
To elect Trump again. Yeah. I mean, I don't really buy that, because I think that there's still a lot of time between now and what the outcome of the trial is going to be and how that is going to influence things.
Also his age. Look,
the
Republicans like to get power and they like to hold power. If Trump were 55 or 60, he'd have a much better chance. But why you want to back this guy when you got a young guy like DeSantis you can get 2 terms out of?
Right. With Trump, you can't even get 2 terms, right? He's a 1 term and out. No, I mean, look, DeSantis...
people aren't thinking about these things right now. When you look at these polls, they're emotional. They're knee-jerk.
Of course, yeah. And they respond to the news cycle, right? I think over a prolonged campaign, I do think it is more likely that it will get much closer as the contests start to near. But also, I mean, I think there is just also a point that we have to make, aside from the horse race of this, that this is really just an extraordinary move that I really think, is gonna work to just tear the country apart even further. Glenn Greenwald spoke to this when he did a monologue on this. It's just kind of incredible how the Democrats in the home stretch of the 2016 campaign, when Trump said to Hillary on that debate stage, if I win, I'm going to appoint a special prosecutor to look into you. It's, oh my God, he's going to go after his political opponents. Can you believe it?
What is this, a third world country?
Is this a third world country? Right. They never addressed the substance of what that investigation would be. It's just bad form. It's just out of bounds to do it. And yet, here they are. It's
a banana republic. I thought it was a banana republic when that happens, when you prosecute your political rivals. Right?
Yeah.
It's a banana republic. Especially, look, these are charges that the feds looked into and decided not to go after.
Well, because as you said before, how can you possibly
Intent.
prove beyond reasonable doubt that there was intent here? Because you
Yeah,
can always just say, I did it to protect my family.
Right. You have to prove he did it specifically to protect his campaign. All he has to say is, no, I didn't. This is... I
did it for my family. My supporters would have loved that I banged Stormy Daniels. Are you kidding me? I would have gone up in the polls if they found that out. It was for Melania.
Look what happened with Bill Clinton. They found out he got blown by an intern. His numbers went through the roof.
Yeah, exactly. And he got blown by a ditzy Jew. I got Stormy Daniels on me. Could you imagine what that had done for my numbers?
That's it. We're never getting Monica on the show now.
Yeah, no. Rodrigo Mendez, thank you for the $1.99. This came in a while ago, but I just caught it here. You'll see the AOC burner account stuff. No, I've not been up to date.
Oh, I thought people were just joking in the chat. I saw people joking about it in the chat. I didn't realize it was a thing.
Is that a thing? I would love to cover that. That would be amazing. That would be a great story if it's true. You have to be wary, though, of stories that break around April Fool's weekend.
Around April Fool's,
because some of that is
we almost covered.
Bunk.
We almost covered one.
We almost got caught. We almost fell for one that the New York City was going to ban Teslas. And Russell sent me the link, and I looked into it, I'm pretty sure this is April Fool's. But you have to be careful, though. You have to be careful.
Yeah. No,
a few years ago,
it was going to be. We had it in the list.
We had it slated, and then luckily I went to vet it. I'm like, oh wait, no, this looks like it's garbage. Nathan Robinson wrote a piece on an April Fool's Day. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, saying I'm out.
I remember that.
Yeah, that he was quitting because of cancel culture and things like that he was hanging it up because in his mind that's not real. And I read that article the first couple paragraphs, and I texted Russell and say, hey, maybe we should do a podcast on this. And then I realized, oh no, April Fool's Day. So you have to be really, really careful, super careful about that. I even vetted the Don Jr. versus Tim Pool because I thought that sounds like something that could be an April Fool's prank. Right. You can have somebody impersonating him or something like that, So you always have to be wary. Don't fall for the April Fool's prank. All right, our TikTok ban segment is next. Tusker, do you still want to call into this one? If you do, the lines are open right now. We're going to take a few more super chats before we get to that. Thank you, folks, for being here tonight.
I'll be right there.
Thank you for being here. Please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out tremendously. If you're here for the first time, please subscribe to the channel. Most nights we have good internet, although knock on wood, it seems to have resolved itself.
I'm telling you, pushing it closer to the modem.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
It can't project further than 3 feet.
Every inch counts. That's what my grandfather told me when I was a little boy. Ellen Jimerson.
That may be the dirtiest joke we've ever made on this show. And that's saying something.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Ellen, for the donations. We appreciate that. Left less. Alex Stein would be great to have on. Hilarious. I don't know if I know Alex Stein. Do you know who Alex Stein is?
I got one who lives in my building, Alex Stein.
I feel like we're very out of the loop this evening for a couple of guys who do this regularly. We're like
Alex Stein, burner accounts.
AOC burner account? What's that, huh? What are you talking about?
What are you talking about with this TikToks?
Yeah, I mean, look, the most unprofessional thing you can do as a performer is make an excuse, right? That's what you say as an actor. You never go into the audition and say, I'm not feeling too well today, so I might not be good. Like, you have to just go in and do it.
Yeah.
So it's unprofessional to make excuses, but for what it's worth, Russell and I have both been extraordinarily busy with our lives these past like few days. Like Russell's had, what do we have, like a 40-hour tour these last few days?
I had, what was that? 30 hours.
Yeah,
30
so
hours.
30 hours of touring for the past few days, and I've been scrambling to get this apartment ready for a move, basically by myself while my wife works. And so, yeah, we've been really, really hustling. So
It was
I apologize if we're not up to date on all the new shit, as they say.
Yeah, that was a type of gig I don't normally take. Where
That's why he couldn't be here Thursday, because he had to start that
your
gig.
tour, it was too much money to turn down. But those tours are basically, you're not really tour guiding, you're facilitating.
Right.
So you're taking them to Dave and Buster's, and then you're making sure their Broadway tickets are there for them, and that kind of thing. And it paid too well to say no, but I hate gigs like that.
Yeah, no,
but I feel like I can't complain. You know,
no, they pay really well, and it's really not that much work. It's just a lot of hanging around and waiting. Yeah, I remember they paid this one lady. It was this kind of group where they just go all out. You know, they just have a ton of money.
Exactly.
This was like some
sales
this
company.
Group
had a baggage train.
Yeah,
they separate. They rented a truck to take their baggage.
Yeah, they would pay the guides at this group I was working for $50 an hour with a minimum of 4 hours. So if you showed up, they had to pay you for 4 hours work, even if you didn't work for 4 hours. So they paid this woman to show up to get the group from the Phantom of the Opera Theater to John's Pizza. And she didn't have to take them to John's Pizza. She simply had to point them to John's Pizza, because Phantom of the Opera is here and John's Pizza is literally across the street.
Right.
So her job was to stand outside the theater when the show got out, and you could tell who was in your group because they had like a badge or something.
These guys all had the same color hoodie.
Oh, okay.
And they had a different color one for each day.
Yeah, exactly. So when the show got out, her job was to stand with a binder that had an arrow on it that way to John's Pizza. So if she saw somebody who was in her tour group, she would say, right that way, go over there, table's waiting for you. That's it. She worked for a half hour. She got paid $200 just to do that.
Look, when I complain about this job, I always think of when I used to drive a horse and carriage. There was this Korean grocer at the bodega on the corner from my house when I lived in Hell's Kitchen. And I'd go in there for cigarettes after work. And I'd pull out this wad of cash from working that night. And he would go, "You make all that money tonight? Oh, you Mr. Easy Life. You have such easy life. I work so hard. You got so easy." Every time I would go in, "Oh, it's Mr. Easy Life."
Yeah, Mr. Easy Life. Mr. Easy Life. Yeah, you told me that story before. Mr. Easy Life. All right, we have Tusker here. Tusker, thank you. Oh, we were dying. Thank God. Tusker's here.
We thought you were auditioning for that shampoo commercial. Everyone seems to think you should be selling that hair.
No, if only. Turning gray like yours, so people aren't really interested in it.
Not like mine, not yet.
Well, but the distinguished gray is always great on guys, but not really the same for women.
I went into the pandemic with mostly brown hair. It happened really fast. It was like within 2 years, my hair more or less went gray.
Yeah, I have a friend that basically that happened to a couple of years ago. It was just like dark black, and then it was just
it's just boom. It happens like that sometimes.
2 or 3 years is crazy.
Yeah. It's just I don't know if it was the pandemic. I don't know if it was the schmaxing. I was like, all of a sudden, boom.
It looks good. It looks good on you.
Thank you, Tusker.
All right, well, let's get down to some business here. Tusker, by the way, another round of applause for Tusker, who did a great job filling in on Thursday. That was a great show. We had a great time. And we talked a little bit.
Yeah, that was a tough one, Russell. Thanks.
No, you guys are great. You guys are great.
She means it was a tough one in terms of the subject matter.
No, I don't know. She said that when during the show. Yeah. Yeah, no, you guys were great. It was a good show.
Yeah, no, it went great. Our friend Colin Radix Carter from the Indie News Network, he
Yeah, Colin.
joined, and yeah, it was a great time.
Yeah.
A great time was had by all. So there are two bills being sort of contested in Congress right now, which seek to ban TikTok from the United States. One is Josh Hawley's bill called the No TikTok on United States Devices Act, which is sort of narrowly focused on banning the app here in the U.S., but there's also a much broader and I think a much scarier Restrict Act, which was co-sponsored by Democrat Mark Warner and Republican John Thune. And we'll get into the specifics of the Restrict Act in a moment. But before we do that, I do want to play a little bit of video. This was just funny stuff of Lindsey Graham on Fox News, apparently confused as to which of these two bills he supports and which he opposes. So here he is with Jesse Waters.
For the Restrict Act.
It's a little hard. He says, I don't think I support the Restrict Act.
I don't think I support the Restrict Act.
You don't support this because you were named as one of the supporters, because this is garbage.
Well, is this the one with John? There's two bills out there. One allows a review of businesses that are connected to China.
You see, the look on Jesse Waters' face is the look of a guy who's like, oh shit, well, one of us is going to be really embarrassed in a few minutes. I hope it's not me. I hope I didn't read it wrong. Did I read it wrong? Or does he not know which bill he supports? That's what that look says.
Hang on. This isn't Hooters?
Secretary, the ability to protect our data. Is that the Restrict Act?
We got S686 right here, March 7th.
Mm-hmm.
And we got a bunch of Republicans supporting it because this thing is crazy town. You don't want the government looking into your private phone.
No, I don't.
If they have a hunch you're colluding with the Russians, we remember how that turned out.
Right. Yeah, no, well, the Constitution trumps a statute. So let me come back and, give you a better explanation. Here's the problem as I see it. China is the parent company of TikTok, and my nieces like TikTok. I don't mind them using TikTok. I just don't want the Chinese government to seize all their data and manipulate the information America sees for political purposes. China is helping drug cartels in Mexico. China is not a friend. Chinese espionage is an all-time high against American business interests. So I want to push back against China, but within a constitutional framework. You're right about that. So you made these allegations, and I'll come answer better next time.
All right, well, I mean, because on Congress.gov, you're listed as one of the co-sponsors of this thing. Maybe it's like Fetterman when your chief of staff does all your work for you. But, Senator, you got to go back and talk to these other senators about this. This thing is nuts, and it's going to get abused like it always does. So we got to clean this up.
So, yeah.
I mean, look, if there's one person in government who doesn't want his phone being spied on by the wrong people, it's got to be Lindsey Graham.
It has to be Lindsey Graham. He doesn't want them finding that Grindr app.
Yeah, no, exactly.
All I had to do was just say, wait, which was the one that was written by the State Department? That's the one I support.
Right. Yeah, so he's a little confused about this, but we did a segment a few days ago. Obviously, you have Josh Hawley looking to ban TikTok without sort of reaching
conditions
in the government, going into all these other areas like the VPNs. Rand Paul just seems against the ban outright, but let's
which is interesting.
Well, he's a libertarian. I mean, that's fairly consistent with his alleged worldview.
Sure.
I mean, that's the thing about, Rand Paul. He kind of, he contradicts himself quite a bit. He's not like a doctrinaire libertarian the way.
That's why I'm saying, because he could have gone either way on
that. He could go either way on these things. Exactly. So let's learn a little bit more about the Restrict Act. Don't take Lindsey Graham's word for it. He's obviously not a very reliable source of information about it, as we've seen. This is a video from TikTok itself by some Chinese communist spy, no doubt, that Tusker, you sent me when we were getting ready to do our show, and I saved it for tonight. So this sums it up, I think, fairly
it just blows the whole thing at the end when he's like, and there is no Uyghur concentration camp. Good night, everybody.
Let's hear it.
is about to fundamentally change forever, and it's terrifying. This is Bill S-686, also known as the Restrict Bill. You'll probably know it as the TikTok ban bill, but it does so much more than just that. It actually does more than any bill I think we've ever seen. I encourage everyone to read it by going here and clicking the text tab, but here are the main takeaways. Foreign adversaries can change by definition, but a few are already listed. They are the People's Republic of China, including Hong Kong, Special Administration Region, the Republic of Cuba, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and of course, the Russian Federation and Venezuela under the regime of Nicolas Maduro Moros. I hope I pronounced that correctly, but these definitions can change at any time. The bill covers hardware technology like modems, routers, and home cameras, and virtual tech like VPNs, and basically bans them if they are manufactured by or used to contact and deal with foreign adversaries. Speaking of VPNs, using VPNs to bypass banned apps such as TikTok is made a criminal act under this bill. And the penalty? It's a minimum imprisonment of 20 years and a minimum fine of $250,000 or $1 million, depending if you knowingly did so to access banned content. The bill gives the federal government the power to monitor any activity used by these suspected devices, virtual or otherwise. Essentially, they can monitor what you are doing at home 24/7 without even informing you. This includes things such as routers, video games, streaming apps, smart thermostats, Ring cameras, basically anything that uses the internet. Now, the real terrifying part of all of this, as if that all wasn't terrifying enough, is that the bill goes on to state that this will happen by the president appointing a secretary of communication. That secretary then forms a group on their own without any voter input whatsoever. This group can have meetings behind closed doors. They don't have to disclose anything. They can ban and deem anything inappropriate or a risk to security at any moment in time. And if they do, they can go through your instant messages, your emails, texts, basically anything that uses the internet, and they can censor it. So in summary, this bill can effectively ban anything the government deems inappropriate extremely quickly without warning. The ramifications of this range from breaking up mass communication methods to even watching the cameras in your home, aka spying on you. It really is that bad.
All right. Well done. We need to hire this fucking guy. Make our job easier. We need him every night. He's got to do the intro to all of our segments.
Yeah. And run our internet.
Yeah, and run the internet. Right, exactly.
Yeah. And I just think it's funny that essentially they're going to get their Nina Jankowicz. No matter what. They're going to get their minister.
Yes, I thought the exact
It is so funny. I swear to God, all three of us were thinking that. I was like, they're bringing back Mary Poppins.
Yeah, she's going to get that gig after all. You can only deny her for so long. Yeah, but look, I mean, look, some people are calling this the Patriot Act 2. It really is the Patriot Act for the modern era, right? The updated version of that.
In some really, it's worse than that. You know, looking at this and hearing this, it's what all this has been leading up to. It's what the Twitter files is revealing. And I think we should look at, we had too much to do, and maybe we could actually get him on as a guest. You know, we'll get accused in certain quarters of coddling the right. And, you know, we certainly do not see them as superior to the people we usually attack. We just feel like, well, you know, the whole corporate media covers what's wrong with the Republicans. Like, what do we need to talk about that for? But it's not that we support them. So Matt Orfalea actually just did one of his masterful videos showing how the Republicans have been contradicting themselves on freedom of speech for decades. You know, they're for it when something happens that hurts them, like when WikiLeaks reveals what's really going on in Iraq. And, you know, then as soon as it hurts the Democrats, or they have a different take. So really, we've been aligning with people like Jim Jordan because, hey, man, I mean, the enemy of my enemy. But we have to understand these are not reliable allies either. In the end, this entire corrupt system is set against the people. We do not have any freedom fighters who are really want to defend our prerogatives. The internet is perhaps the greatest threat to elite power that they've ever faced. They don't want us able to communicate and build consensus this way without any restrictions. They've been wanting to do something like this for a long time, and the Twitter files reveals the steps that they've taken in that direction. And a bill like this, look, I think this one will be defeated because the light's been shown on it and too many prominent figures are against it. It's not going to end there. That's just telling you what they want to do. Because if you look at the Patriot Act was just putting into law everything on Dick Cheney's wish list from the Nixon administration.
Right.
It was everything sitting in his drawer for
absolutely.
the extension of executive power since 1974. So this is just maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but maybe in 5 years, maybe in 6 years, maybe in a moment of national crisis, just like with the Patriot Act. That's why they had the Patriot Act ready to go so fast, because they already had this all written. They were just waiting for a moment to pass something like that.
Or a plane will fly into another building,
Right.
and then we'll
exactly.
Well, you already have people projecting that there's going to be some military conflict with China over Taiwan in the next year or so. I mean, there you go. As soon as that happens, TikTok gone. And they won't just ban TikTok, right? They will use it, as Russell says, as an excuse to implement more of what they've always wanted to do, right? This Josh Hawley schmuck doesn't know how it works. You don't just go for the thing that you say you want. You go for 10 more things than what you say you want, but you only front and center that thing that you think is going to have popular support behind it. The problem with this, though, seems to me that over 100 million Americans use TikTok. Is that right? I mean, it's an astoundingly high number of Americans are on TikTok.
See, this is another issue, and so it came up on the last show that I was for banning TikTok. You made a good point that hey, you've got the same thing on Reels, you've got the same technology out there. If it's not there, it's just going to go someplace else. You're right. Does it make a difference that I personally believe that China has malevolent intent, that they've really rigged the algo to be as destructive to the psyche of the people using that app as possible? Does it really make a difference in the outcome from the decisions you'd make about the algorithm with a profit motive? Like, is the final outcome of equally destructive, so it doesn't really matter what the motivation is? You're going to come up with the same techniques. They're both going to destroy people's brain, literally destroy people's brains. Like, you can look at the neurological scans of people who use TikTok, and there is brain damage. Like, this is not a joke, and this is where we've talked about this before. It's a problem with democracy. It's a flaw in democracy, because if people like sugar better than vegetables, there's nothing you could do to keep them from becoming unhealthy, obese slobs like we are a country of. So I call it the great giving up. Instead of telling people to do something about it, now we've decided, you know what? It's not even unhealthy. That's great. You roll on down to the store for another bacon, egg, and cheese, fatso. Go ahead. And anybody who tries to shame you, they're a phobe. Right? Like, that's just completely giving up on the idea that you can do anything about it. Instead, let's just rewrite reality. Let's just pretend there's nothing wrong with it. Democracy is not really and certainly capitalism is not suited to dealing with a social media landscape that's destroying people psychologically and even on a neurological level. What did they do in China? You can't do that here. What they said, no, TikTok's going to be educational videos and very inspirational videos about people winning prizes from the CCP for designing a new water filtration system. And that's about all you're getting on TikTok in our country. Is that better for these kids? Yeah, it is. I mean, anybody who's paying attention, I don't agree with the Chinese system. People like us would be the first people to get thrown into prison for our views in a system like that. I'm not naive about the glory, as some people in our comment section are, about the glories of totalitarian China.
I think that guy left, actually.
I'm talking about in general.
No, I
like
know.
whenever we talk about China, we
No,
get
but one
these
guy
people
gave me
who-
a huge problem about it, and I don't even talk that much about it. It's almost all you, but one guy gave me a huge problem about it, and he finally quit watching the show.
Oh yeah, he was giving you a
Yeah.
Well, they decided the Chinese stopped paying him to come on. They said, those guys are hopeless. No, I'm telling you, we have, and I'm not one to jump to this because of all the years of Russiagate bullshit. There have definitely been people in the comments section arguing for the Chinese point of view who I believe were agents, because their use of English was just a little off, like good, but American wouldn't quite say it like that. Like the syntax is just a little flawed, and the arguments were just a little too batshit. You know, that's not
I call
necessarily
that Uber tech support English. Like Uber,
that's what I'm saying.
Uber
That's what I'm
support
saying.
line. You know,
Like
Exactly.
yes, I've seen people in the comment section be like, you need to be more honest about the Chinese government.
I mean, my whole thing with the China thing is like, it's not up to me to change China's government. I don't.
Well, that I fully agree with. I don't think
You
it's
know,
our business to get into
if
personal
their
affairs.
people aren't moving to overthrow their system, then fine. You know, whatever. I'm more worried about our system and you know how that's impacting people.
Well, particularly given that China has a long history of not being particularly interested in getting into the internal affairs of others. So it's not like, well, we need to do something about them before they do it to us. They're not. If you leave them the fuck alone, they're not. They're culturally predisposed not to get involved in the internal affairs.
In their
countries for
5,000
of years. Right.
years of civilizational history, they are a very internal looking culture. Right. I mean, that was the whole entire thing with the Opium Wars, where basically the Chinese were like, Britain, you're silly. Just stay out of here. We don't need any of your crap.
Right.
And so they forced them open. You know, I mean, that's just kind of in their culture. And so the Chinese really don't worry me in that way. As far as
I think
hold on. Let Tusker answer you on TikTok, because she's been waiting to respond to this for 4 days.
I mean, I didn't know.
I'm being a mouthy Jew. Sorry.
No, you're fine. No, I didn't know what your counter debate would be. You know, so I didn't really know what I was going to respond to. I mean, I think I don't have any problem with us banning TikTok. I mean, but what I do think that's happened with TikTok, and it's kind of like what you were talking about, like, well, the Chinese use it differently. I think it's a good algorithm. And when I say a good algorithm, I think that it's probably an excellent algorithm. I think it shows people exactly what it is that they want to see. Now, is that itself, whenever that was created, were the Chinese going, this will polarize and destroy America? No, we do it to ourselves. It's our culture. This is what we do. Cancel culture on Twitter has nothing to do with the Chinese government. We do it ourselves already. And I really do feel like most of the time Americans are they've got no class consciousness. You know, they watch propaganda all the time. MSNBC and Fox News, they're both propaganda networks. You know, they do that all the time, and they don't really have any clue about what's going on. How do they entertain themselves from the horrors that are happening around them? TikTok dances. I mean,
I think that's right.
I don't
agree
think
with you.
that. Yes, like we're further along on that track because we've been this hyper capitalist culture for a long time, but it's all people. It's all people, or China wouldn't have had to. They changed course. They had to impose new rules on how specifically kids could use the internet. And they imposed new rules that didn't exist on because they did start using it that way. So it's just a monkey thing. We're all monkeys, right? I mean, the kinds of things that attract our brain, the kinds of tendencies we've inherited over millions of years of evolution, that's common across the species. And if you hand them this kind of technology, we're going to tend to do shitty things with it. I mean,
look, I mean, sorry.
No, keep go.
No, I was going to say all societies are born, they peak, they rot, and they die, right? Like all societies die out. And to me, the internet is just something that accelerates the pace at which societies can grow, peak, decline, and die, right? Social media makes that even faster because now we can all, turn our phones on and communicate with as many people as we can tweet at or, respond to or post to. And so it just speeds up the whole process. But it doesn't do anything that society wouldn't do anyway to itself. I think the decline of our society here has been on autopilot for quite a long time. I think, our version of what we call democracy here has been on the way out for, at least the last 25 years, probably going back even further than that. And the internet has just sort of kicked that into hyperdrive. But look, I mean, this is the inevitable course of things, and ultimately I just kind of have the feeling that we should just let people do what they want to do. Let them talk how they want to talk. Let them express what they want to express. Most of it's going to be absolute garbage, but that's always more or less been the case. I think it's more the case now than probably it was 50, 60 years ago. Russell was talking about how we used to be a more enlightened culture at a certain time. Then again, back in those days, you only heard from the most enlightened among us because you had to break through with talent and skill and something to say if you wanted to be given the microphone. What these things do is they give everybody a microphone and a camera and their own little TV studio wherever they are.
And
so
the result is this show.
And the result is this show. Exactly. The result is this show. Absolutely. I mean, you're joking, but that's actually 100% true. And so, to me, to say we need to ban TikTok, it's showing a little too much concern for the society, quite frankly. I've never been all that invested in American society. I never thought much of it. It always has kind of seemed, at least as long as I've been a conscious adolescent turning into an adult, that it was kind of on its way out. And I don't think that's necessarily a tragic thing, and I think it's good to let things run their course and let people live their lives how they want. In a way that preserves, whatever free will we do or do not have, and whatever free expression we want access to, and the tools that sort of make that possible. And if that means, you want to be able to twerk, see, that's what this is really about, Russell, is that your whole twerking series never took off the way you thought it would, and now you're bitter. I think going on.
So I
thought my milkshake would bring the boys to the yard.
I know. Yeah, right. Exactly. It didn't work out exactly that way.
So you detransitioned. I get it.
Right. It didn't work for me. Didn't work.
But, so Russell, what do you think
about banning TikTok?
Well, no, about responding to Keaton.
Yes, I agree that we're in a period of social decline. Whether we would have entered this type of decline without, I think the character of it is being defined by a kind of technology that's never existed before, and it's putting some new wrinkles in it. However, the general pattern of breaking down into tribalism as common beliefs and common faith in society's institutions breaks down. That's common across the breakdown of all empires and all civilizations, that everyone falls into their tribes. So we're doing this very strange identity politics version of that. But people don't see that it's a symptom of, I mean, some people do, but generally they don't see it as a symptom of civilizational collapse. Ironically, they see it as a sign that society is progressing, and it's really not progressing. When you even compare it to the real social justice movements that it tries to claim itself as heir to, it's so clearly like that TV show that jumped the shark. It's like, man, that show was really good when Malcolm X was on it, but this shit, ugh, I can't even watch that. It's so obvious that it's nothing like those really inspiring and really insightful movements that it tries to pretend it's heir to, because it's not coming from the same place. I feel I feel it's coming from a place of social collapse. It's not really coming from a motivation of trying to achieve some kind of justice. And that's a big part of why the language of it, you listen, I don't know about you. It doesn't matter how many times I hear it. You listen to the I Have a Dream speech, whatever you think about MLK's approach versus more aggressive approaches or Black Panthers, I like them too. But you listen to that speech, man, you get chills. You get chills. It's inspiring. You show me something coming out of anti-racism that makes you feel that way. You can't find it because it's an ugly philosophy. It's a philosophy that does not promise us a better vision of humanity. It's a vision that does not bring us together. It's quite the opposite. And it's a symptom of the times that we live in, because the times that we live in are not about coming together. It's about a civilization falling apart. That's what I mean. It's the great giving up. We're living in a time when all of our highest ideals, when all of our noblest aspirations are being abandoned. And we're calling things that are essentially a symptom of giving up on living up to our highest ideals, social evolution, to a deeper perspective, when really it's just giving up on being better than we are.
I mean, I think that there is a lot of truth to that, but I really do think that it's a divide and conquer strategy. Like, I really do. I think it's just, and it's being pushed by the ruling class because it's so effective at making everyone so sectarian and not finding like the things that make you like human together, Right. And I think that's just, I think it's just a product of, our government. All of our politicians have been the same for years and years and years and years. And if nothing changes and if everything stagnates, nothing gets better, well, then their only recourse is to make everyone point their fingers at each other. And I think that's exactly what's going on with it. And people are perceiving that as sort of like kind of like the social justice type stuff or, things like that. They're seeing that as a good thing, but actually it's just shutting everyone off from each other instead of actually making you a problem solving community. Like, hey, I know we have differences. How do we work together to actually achieve something? Because that's what our government does that. Why can't you learn from your own ruling class? Like, they will do it every single time. If something advances their interests, Democrats and Republicans write together and they'll get it done if it helps them. And we can't seem to learn the same thing on the left in the working class.
Well, this is what I'm saying. The way that we're collapsing is particular to our technology and our moment in history, but the shape of it has a lot in common with civilizations that have collapsed before us. Like, yes, we have, particular elements, obviously, the internet that never existed, that didn't exist when England was the last empire to collapse. I think America, our collapse is going to be particularly brutal and particularly violent because unlike previous civilizations that collapsed, other than Native Americans, there are no Americans. There's no America. There's not a common racial identity around which to rally. And unfortunately, I think part of what you're seeing with the divisiveness of this era is a prelude to everyone really breaking back down into those racial groups and those ethnic groups and turning against each other, because unlike England or France, what does it mean to be an American? That's not an easy thing to answer in the face of a collapse of that society. What's that?
I said you hate the Chinese government.
Yeah.
That makes everyone an American.
Yeah, well, we have a lot of Chinese people, so.
No, but look, I mean, I think this was in a sense, I mean, I wrote a little, just a stupid little think piece way back. This was a few years ago, questioning whether or not, this project was designed to fail. Because by fail, what I mean is exactly what Tusker, you were talking about, which is to have a permanent underclass who fights each other over who they are and where they came from or what language they speak or who they pray to for scraps, while this cabal of elites runs away with all the money. This was really, you couldn't cook up in a lab a better set of factors if you wanted that to happen, right? This country was founded by this was really a revolution of elites against other elites who were thousands of miles away, who they were tired of paying up to, right?
Right.
And so
they didn't want to kick up to the boss.
Right. They didn't want to kick up to the boss. And so now you have this melting pot, which they insist is this wonderful thing. And it is a wonderful thing for them, because as long as you have a melting pot, you're going to have people in that pot fighting each other over, where they stand in that system. It's going to be very, very difficult to find any sort of unity. That's what a lot of the causes that we have tried to support have been about. But as you can see, the sort of machinations of power have ways of shutting those down. The George Floyd protest was really the last example of that. I think the Sanders campaigns represented that to a certain extent, not as powerfully as the George Floyd movement did, but certainly they were an embodiment of that spirit. And, they found ways to just shut these movements down. And in a sense, look, there is just a lack of forward momentum to this whole American project. Now, that's what we were talking about at the very top of the show. Maybe not the very top, I think it was the second segment we did. Part of the reason why this new BRICS alliance is forming is because they just see America as this big, fat thing just sitting there and eating itself to death. Yep. We're not moving anywhere. We don't have a vision that we express to the world. We have our will, which we enforce on people's, and then we have what's going on here, which is a bunch of people just on their phone, just sort of imbibing in their own narcissism. That's what our culture is now. But I think that's what our culture was really in the 90s as well. We just didn't have the tools for it. Right? Like, I think that's been the culture for a while. Look at MTV, right? What was MTV? That's more your generation than mine, but I was around for the tail end of MTV, right? People would come home, they watch MTV. First of all, it's like 3 minutes of just brain dead content, followed by 10 minutes of ads, and then another 3 minutes of content. Like, what was that?
But this is what I would argue. You cannot overstate the difference between that world and a world where you walk around with MTV.
No, I agree.
Right? So, yeah, we had MTV, but we went out and played fucking football too. And we did a lot more of that than we did of watching MTV. This is where this is unique. We've never had anything so completely destructive to people's intellectual capacity, to their physical activity, even to their sex drive. Teenagers' sexual activity is plummeting because it's turning them into sexless androids who just sit in front of screens all day. Like their animal spirits even are being sucked out of them by constantly staring at these screens. To me, it's no accident that all of a sudden the canon of literature became, this is dead white man. Motherfucker, you can't read Tolstoy. You've been spending your whole life staring at a screen. You can't read War and Peace, and you know it. Oh, it's dead white man. No, you can't read it. Admit it. You can't read that. You can't read Moby Dick. You're too stupid. You're too stupid. You spent your whole life looking at a screen. You cannot handle that density of information and language anymore.
But are these screens and these apps like TikTok, are they not just exposing the banality of humanity, the banality of culture in general? Like I always say, like when I would get shit for like staring at the phone too much, what are you looking at your phone for? Why don't you join the conversation? All right, well, talk about something interesting. Maybe I will. But you guys are fucking boring. Like, my phone is more interesting than you, right? That's why I'm on my phone, right? My phone, I can watch something interesting on my phone. What am I going to sit here? Yeah.
I'll answer that. Do you know how many great novels, great paintings, great songs would never have been written if people
that's a great point. Oh, it's a great point.
Because
it's a great point. No, I can see
that boredom makes you creative.
Of course.
Because you want to ease the boredom. And to ease the boredom, you start imagining. You start daydreaming.
No,
you
right.
start getting ideas, right? This is what I'm saying. It's literally, we know this from neurological scans. It is literally altering people's brains. This is not speculative. It's not theoretical. There's never been anything like this.
But once again, if we ban TikTok, I mean, there's just going to be another form of it that comes up and it replaces it. It doesn't solve our problem anyway.
You're right. You're right. I mean, look, if there's any way to solve it, and this is why, I asked Taibbi when we had him on, is specifically about some of the culture war stuff, but even more broadly, I don't know if there's a way out of this that doesn't go through the right, because when you look at the people who are trying to defend the idea of a classical education and going back to that mode of thought of studying the classics and debating Dante, that's like Hillsdale College. That's like what DeSantis is trying to do with New College. Now, look, they're going to put their right-wing spin on it, and they do. And I don't agree with that. But the idea of trying to restore the idea of a classical education as an antidote to what I'm talking about, I don't see another way that you could deal with it within our system, because we do not have a system where we can just command that we're not going to have this anymore. So what you have to do is create a cultural revival of values and activities and behaviors and habits that are antithetical to staring at a screen all day, which means you have to go back to the way things were done before we had that technology. Now, I'm not saying that's feasible or that that's going to happen, but I'm saying that's the only way I can see within a capitalist system. You would have to have a social movement that caught on, that brought people back to that way of approaching education and knowledge.
I don't know, Russell. I'm kind of hearing a little bit of cultural revolutionary talk in there. The cultural revolution there,
It's all cultural revolution. It's just a question of whose. Right.
Well, no, I mean, I don't know. And I really don't know the answer. And I really do think that it comes down to the fact that the left was decimated like a long time ago. It was absolutely just the core of the left was in the United States was destroyed in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. It was destroyed. And we just don't even have the base to really build it back up, because people are reading professional managerial trash takes and thinking that is what leftism is. And it never has been. It's been about material conditions.
And that way of looking at things has really overwhelmed the world. I talked a little bit when I got back from India about how I went in their bookstore and, I was like, stupid me. Of course, because all the books were stuff that we've never heard of. Of course, there's a billion people there. Of course, they have their own genres of literature, right? They'll have books like the Da Vinci Code, but based in their own mythology, like the Mahabharata affair. They'll have things like that. But you know what they really have?
What?
How to get rich, how to succeed in business, how I made $1 million. Like those business values, that's very much gotten into their culture. I would say as much, if not more, than we have it here. Like that was a lot of their publishing industry was dedicated to those, how to succeed and how to streamline your business, like a lot of stuff like that. So these values of capitalism have infected the world. You know,
And I would also have
gone everywhere.
I would also have to say, because I mean, and Yanis Varoufakis is all right. I like some of his analysis, but he kind of talks about like this techno-feudalism type shift that's happening. And I mean, I will have to say that I do think that there is kind of something to the truth of like social media and stuff like that. You know, you've got Instagram influencers and you've got, you know, your TikTok hucksters and, you know, just all this stuff. It really does seem like, are they trying to move us to an economy that's based on the commodity of the self? You know, because if that's the,
that's a good observation.
Case, then identity politics is very good branding for an economy that's based on that type of model. It's not based on making anything. It's not based on anything that actually creates any type of value. The only thing that it does is it just provides like content just to space more people out and put people to sleep.
But this is why I say our collapse is going to be particularly painful, because I don't know of any civilization where the population has been so unprepared to fend for itself under difficult conditions. Like this is like taking a bunch of domestic cats and throwing them out in the middle of a jungle to figure out how to survive. Like, Americans are not in a place at this point where they can handle anything like a Great Depression, anything like that. I was watching a girl. It's funny that you say this. I was on the train yesterday, and there was this girl, you know, very attractive, very put together. And, you know, she's sitting there and I'm watching her with like a wet rag, like wiping at her leg, like there's a smudge on her leg or something, like making sure that she's completely presentable. And when she's done doing this, she takes her camera there on the subway and she poses several times to take these pictures of herself. How is somebody like that going to deal with the collapse of the dollar as the world's reserve currency? That person is not going to have the slightest idea how to survive in that world.
You should have gone up to her and asked her.
I don't think she would have understood the question.
She would have thought that was the weirdest come on feed, and then she probably would have spent all day making a TikTok video, much like guys in the gym videos and stuff like that.
Exactly. This guy came up to me and asked me about dialectical materialism on the subway.
In case you need
it, tired of guys doing that to me.
Got a rent stabilized apartment in Harlem you could shack up at. Yeah.
I have an extra room, actually.
Keaton, what do you think?
That would actually be a good sketch. We should get Tusker to do that sketch. Oh yeah, Keaton, remind me. I've got to do my call for submissions.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll do that between this segment and the next one. No, I mean, look, I think that is a very good point that Russ makes. And I think the point about, you know, good art and, you know, creativity being born of boredom is spot on. So, you know, JR had a funny line. Keaton making the case for the most shallow view of life entertained me. Yeah. No, I mean, but look, it is true. Like, you know, back when I was a younger guy, like late teens, early 20s, I would write constantly. I would do plays and film projects constantly. And very, very important part of the creative process when it comes to writing, to me, was just being able to space out and zone out.
Yep.
Stephen King talks about how he takes walks all the time. I used to do the exact same thing. I would take a walk and I would put my headphones on. You know, I'd usually have some kind of music because that gets the juices flowing. But that's very, very important. It is important to be able to tolerate stillness, to tolerate boredom.
That's it.
You know, and create something out of it. When
and
you have
and this
constant
thing is
gratification right
designed to make you look. It fucks your brain up.
Right. No, look, there's no question about that. That is one of the major costs. But, you know, look, I think there are a lot of things that are a net loss, a net negative to society that we allow to perpetuate. You know, booze is a net negative to, you know, to people enjoy it.
Not like that. Not like that. Not the way that this has been incorporated into life, to the degree that it's very difficult, because it's become so much a part of our economic system, to unplug from it. So you're forced to participate in the economy to get tied. I resisted having a cell phone for as long as I could because I saw what that was going to do to us as a people. I didn't want it. eventually I had to get it because the world changed. I just couldn't not have one.
Yeah, I didn't have text messaging on my phones until I was like 22 or 23. It was very annoying to my friends who wanted to get in touch with me, but they didn't feel like talking.
I
You know,
didn't
like they
learn
could
how to
never just
text
shoot me a
until I started my last theater company. So I learned to text in like
Still doesn't know.
2007.
Okay. So I was after, because I didn't until I was like 2009, 2010. I didn't have text.
Oh wow! So I
Yeah.
texted before him. So.
Yep. You beat me to it. All right. Do we want to wrap that segment up? Did we say what we have to say about that?
Well, I don't know, because did we actually have a disagreement?
Well, I'm not
you
for
know,
banning
I
TikTok. I'm
changed
against
my
banning TikTok.
I kind of changed my mind as soon as Keaton said, "Well, we have other things like that."
Yeah, you ever hear of
Because
Instagram,
then
Grandpa?
it's like, yeah.
They could switch, yeah.
Oh, from the person who learned to text after I did.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Oh, it's all because essentially this TikTok ban bill, from what I see that it's doing, and I said it last time, I think it's codifying into law exactly what Edward Stone's exposed. I think that's what it's doing. It's making it legal to do that.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, I think that's really, really scary. I don't know. Maybe we want the Chinese to have all of our TikTok dances if they don't really care about anything outside of their civilization.
I mean, at this point, look, this is why I need a partner, because I'm a very loyal person, and the fact that I don't want to destroy this channel for Keaton, you don't know how much that keeps me in check. So all I'm going to say overall is the system at this point is a threat to us, and it cannot be reformed at this point. And if it is left in place, eventually laws like this are going to come into effect, and we are going to be living even more so in dystopian sci-fi than we are now. So what I'm suggesting you do about that, I leave that up to you.
Maybe nothing. Maybe just go on your phone and hang out. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to hang out
Maybe
because
hang out on your phone. That's all.
Russell's now talking dirty to me. Now Russell's talking my language.
Right.
So I'm gonna need to get out of here.
I'm just suggesting that you finger paint. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, it's same. I think I'm probably just gonna look at funny cat videos on TikTok.
Yeah.
Look, it's nothing to be afraid of. Like this is what comes back to my main point, right? Just to get serious for a second. It's nothing to fear. Just like death is nothing to fear, right? You won't even know what happened after it happened. You don't have to be afraid. The decline of American civilization is nothing to fear. It's actually probably a pretty good thing for the world, if I'm being completely honest. But it's natural. This is what happens. We happen to be alive during this time. There's no reason to really resist it at this point.
And hopefully it gives us a chance to build something different.
Well,
perhaps
that's the upside.
Perhaps. I mean, but that'll probably be for
you got to clear the dead brush.
That'll probably be for the next generation. We probably won't be around for that, you know.
Yep.
But that's okay too. You know, like look, this is just the natural course of things. You know, to me there's no reason to fear it or even dread it, you know.
Well, you know, it's very interesting. I mean, you're talking about if you have a shift to the center of culture and power back to the east, you're talking about the completion of a cycle going back like 500 years, like shifting back to the east and away from the west, and having a new cycle of Eastern dominance, as we've had many times throughout world history.
Yeah, I mean, I really kind of do think that that's just what it is. You know, I mean, and those things happen. I disagree with Ray Dalio on so many of his politics, but he'd done like a pretty good little video about like the rise and falling of empires.
I've seen it.
Yeah, it's not. It's an easy way to look at things, I mean.
All right, for those of you whose brains are not cheese from this, I would recommend a book called From Dawn to Decadence: 500 Years of Western Civilization by Jacques Borzon. He's a French historian. I am assuming he's deceased by now. When I bought that book, it was like reading a book from Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles, because he opens up the introduction by saying, I first began considering the question of the decline of Western civilization in 1924. The guy was in his 90s when he wrote this. It was like his masterwork. And he gets into a lot of what I talk about when this subject comes up. I got a lot of this from him. Like, he talks a lot about the symptoms of going back to Persia. Like, he talks about things that we on the left tend to like, kind of loose morals, things like that. He talks about how, profanity, all cultures have a concept of that. And the acceptability of it is something that you start to see emerge as the society starts to decline. The use of profanity, loss of faith in institutions. It's a fascinating book if you have the patience to read that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I would also just have to say, as far as us talking about I know there are so many people on the left that, they really kind of get sort of hostile about some of the people that are like, hey, you should read more. But it is pretty helpful. I mean, it's not like you have to read every day, I mean, I'm the same. You can't see. I have got bookshelves over here that are full. I've got a whole entire wall of books in there. I've got books stacked all over the place.
Are your shelves bowing? Or are you?
No, I have sturdier shelves.
You're not rocking that look.
No, not yet.
Not
If
yet.
I put them all in one place, I probably would.
Yes.
But I mean, and I think it is just, if anything, it's kind of just about sort of your own ability to kind of focus on something and complete something and that type of stuff, instead of being constantly distracted by things. Because it is very easy whenever I'm in the middle of a dense book on the Eastern Front for me to just pick up my phone and go zone out.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Well, we've talked about meditation and stuff on the show before, a while back. Really, I think that was probably before we had anybody watching us. But it is important for that.
They've all left
It's
now.
super.
Remember those days?
Yeah.
It'd be like, yo, we had 17 people tonight.
We had 17 in here tonight. Big crowd tonight. Full house tonight.
A lot of comments.
I think we're catching on. But yeah, no, I mean, it is really, really important for that. I don't do it much anymore. There was a year where I would do it pretty regularly, and then things got too chaotic again. So I haven't done it in a while, but I notice a big difference because what it does is it brings
alters
you
the structure of your brain.
Well, it definitely alters. It actually does. Yes.
No, it
absolutely.
does. Yes.
Scientifically,
Yes.
it alters the actual shape and structure of your brain. But it also it trains you to relax in the sense that you can always just return to that place, no matter what's going on outside. No matter what's going on in your life, no matter even if you receive a horrible diagnosis from a doctor, no matter what is going on or where you are, you can always just close your eyes, breathe, and reset, and just go to that zone. Nobody can take that from you. That's why it's a very, very powerful thing, because it gives you a tool that literally no one can take from you under any circumstance, which makes the world a much lower stakes kind of place and allows you the sort of the sort of sureness of minds to deal with things that come up. And allows you the patience to see things through and the patience to just experience a moment for what it is. And out of those moments of quiet and still, come thoughts and feelings and attitudes, right? Mm-hmm. There are times if I'm when I'm listening to a podcast in the car or when I'm researching for the show and I'm thinking, okay, what are we going to talk about tomorrow? We got a show. We got to come up with, okay, here's an interesting issue. I'll listen for 5 minutes to get a gist of what the issue is, and then I'll turn it off, and I'll just drive and think about what I just heard and formulate a point of view on it. And then once I get a point of view on it, I'll hit play again, and I'll see if that point of view is right. A lot of times that turns out to be wrong because I didn't do enough research. I just got that first impression of whatever issue we're talking about. But sometimes I am right on the first time. And then if I'm not, I'll listen to another 5 minutes. I'll pause it again. Okay, let's think about what we just heard. Let's form an opinion on that. Let's form an idea about that, an attitude about that. Play another 5 minutes. See how that checks out. That's what it is. It's those moments between consumption. The moments where you're responding to the noise is not when you're actually thinking. It's you got to hit pause and be able to just sit with a thought.
Yeah.
Now the audience knows we only half digest these things before we expound on them. Thank you very much, Keaton.
No, I didn't say
You let the cat out of the
No,
bag.
I said I get through it. I didn't say I stop. I only do 5 minutes of research per topic.
I read the
That's
first
it.
3 sentences and go.
I stop. I only do 5. I tell Russell, I say, how long is the article? 1,000 words?
Yeah,
no, not
no,
doing it. No.
250 is my limit.
250 is
in my
limit.
contract.
Exactly.
Is that in BuzzFeed form? Yeah, just the listicle.
The more you meditate, the more going to that is your default in stressful situations, because
Yeah, absolutely,
literally
yeah.
your brain gets conditioned that way.
Mhm.
So you
Yeah,
get
no.
stressed out. It's just you automatically,
Right.
you don't even think about it.
Right, exactly.
You just,
And without
you know.
that tool in your box, it just escalates, right? And
Right.
Yeah, and I can say it's also one of those things, like, for example, because I mean, like, I'll get called in at 3:00 in the morning dealing with somebody that's literally dying on me, and I've got to do CPR, remember all the equipment, like all that other type of stuff, and that it is a zen place.
Yeah.
It doing meditating, or I would say like reading or any type of thing that's like more focused. It just gives you a level of self-discipline and critical thinking, and allows you to go back to that more easily, and then be able to access it whenever you're talking about whatever thing. You usually, it helps with your processing and your ability to just kind of analyze things even faster. Nice.
Yeah. After I quit smoking, meditation, yoga, and biking, and a lot of support from my friends saved my life. Like, that was definitely part of the mix that allowed me, because that's another thing. I mean, your brain is so dependent on that habit. You remove it, that's very difficult. I mean, that's why I looked at holistic ways to alter your brain, and that's why I really focused on it wasn't the first time I ever meditated, but I never took it that seriously, like every night without fail to do it like that.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we solved all the world's issues, boys.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, Tusker. Always
That's
great
it.
to hear from you.
Thank you,
Indeed.
Tusker.
Certainly
Thank
saved
you.
that segment. That would have been pretty fucking boring without.
No. All right. I'm hopping back in the audience.
All right. Thank you, Tusker.
See
Round of
you,
applause for
Tusker.
Tusker.
Thank you. Thank you, my alter ego.
Yes, indeed. All righty. All right, we're going to do our final segment of the evening, but Russell, you reminded me to remind you about our open call. So why don't you go ahead?
Okay, so as you know, me and Keaton both come out of a theater background. And as you've noticed, we've been doing more comedy. We've kind of been leaning into sketches. Now, I have a lot of things that I would like to do that I need performers to do that I can't do myself. At this point, and this is one of the great tragedies of my life, it has been shocking to me that most of the arts community, when the shit hit the fan and push came to shove, they are reflexively pro-establishment shitlibs.
Right.
I am not going to be able to get together a crew of performers from that community to do these kinds of politics. Even people who agree, I get private messages from people in the arts community that I know who thank me for saying the things that I say, but they feel they can't do it because of their careers. They have careers in the arts. They can't speak out on these things. So it's not even the ones who don't agree with it. They can't say so. They can't talk about it.
So if you're a disgruntled loser with no career and nothing to lose, and you want to come join our comedy sketch team, send us an email.
No, man.
No,
not everyone lives in New York.
I know. I'm joking.
Not everyone lives in LA. Yeah. Not everyone is in this position. And the great thing about having a platform like this, I'm not limited to these fucking shitlibs here in New York, man. We're worldwide. Like you said, 35% isn't even in this country. Right. And there are a lot of people with talent who that's not their career. That's not what their income is dependent on. So they don't have to worry about that. I think one of the reasons, this is a theory of mine, Keaton knows, I wrote an article about this that I keep meaning to complete, about how the artists turned out this way. Part of it is that a lot of disproportionate number of people who go into the arts are privileged people from middle to upper middle class backgrounds, because that's what makes them feel economically secure enough to pursue a career that's so notoriously bound to end in poverty, because they have that trust fund to fall back on. So that's part of it. I think part of it is also because the business is so notoriously competitive that it wasn't hard for a bunch of political commissars to insert themselves into the casting decisions and make everyone terrified of getting blacklisted. I think that's another part of the reason that, and I'm talking from a theater perspective, this has happened in painting, the entire panoply of the arts. And I think that's part of it. But yes, we're cranking up because I would really like to be doing sketch and musical parody and all of the things that I did as a theater artist. I really specialized in dark satire and political commentary. But the commentary I would make now, I'm not, it's a waste of time to do an open audition in the normal pool of actors who read backstage. Because as soon as they see we're making fun of Nancy Pelosi, they're out there. They're all I'm with her kind of motherfuckers, man. They're all like that. I mean, and like I said, the ones who aren't are not gonna risk their ability to get cast by the people who basically run things. So that is my long way of saying I'm looking for performers. I'm looking for comedy people. I'm looking for people with good comic timing to work on these sketches, song parodies, ideas. We want to develop different recurring characters and basically kind of be a modern day laugh-in, right down to the fact that we are running a candidate for president.
Exactly.
So Keaton, where should they submit for that?
Well, just email us, dudissidents@gmail.com. If you're on Twitter, you can DM us. But email is the best since, if you have like a reel or like if, you've done some stuff and you have YouTube links, or if you want to send us, music files or audio files of your work, it's probably just best to send us an email, dudissidents@gmail.com. But yeah, that would be great. I mean, it would be great to get like a little comedy troupe going, right? A sort of sketch troupe going that we can, bring in. And we won't do necessarily sketch every week. We do a Sunday funny every week. Sometimes it'll be a funny video essay, or sometimes it'll be a top 10 list or something like that. But at least once a month we want to get like a legit sketch going. Yeah,
exactly.
To start, and then hopefully it'll be more than that as time
goes on. Particularly people who can do impersonations of different political figures, and we'll have recurring sketches built around those impersonations, media figures, people who can do Maddow, Joy Reid, and people like this. We will have a field day with that, but I cannot pull that from the acting pool
New York City. No, absolutely
no
not.
way. No way.
Absolutely. That's why I lost interest in doing theater, because it was, once it became dominated by, people like that, or once I became conscious that it was dominated by people like that, and once I no longer was a person like that, I should say, that's when it became kind of repulsive to me. Like they've always kind of been the same. It's just you didn't really realize it until
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Well, I actually had a little bit of a Facebook conversation with somebody
Bernie
I worked
Sanders
with back then about that. Yeah, well, because it was such a watershed, you didn't realize you didn't disagree, you didn't agree. You thought you were all on the same page, and then the Sanders campaign just made you realize, oh shit, they don't actually believe in the things I believe in.
Right. Exactly.
When push comes to shove, they're elitists who support elite power. Wow. Like for that, I don't even get why you would go in the arts. Like, what's it about? Like, fucking go be a lawyer, make some money, man. Like, if you're just going to be an establishment shill, what are you doing being an artist?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Like, why you just want to play for the rest of your life?
Right. Well, that's right. That's exactly right. I mean, that's a perfect way of saying it, because that's exactly how I thought of it. So like, all right. So if you guys are supporting Hillary Clinton and you're so devastated that Hillary Clinton is not the president because this is your version of what a better world looks like, of what a transcendent future looks like, at that point, what are you doing with your art that means anything? You're not. You're just playing. It's just pretending at that point.
Dude, I saw an artist who actually I respect artistically, because he's like one of 3 people I've ever known who went down with the ship. Like, most people Once they find out they're never signing the rich and famous contract, they're out.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You know,
Right.
I've known like 3 people who went into old age and just went down with that ship, man. He's one of them. And he's actually a very good poet. His poetry is actually very good, really good when he's writing about, you know, relationships and, you know, life and stuff like that. If he starts talking politics, he's talking about, you know, John Heilman said something really interesting the other day.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. No, it's wild. Absolutely wild. All right, let's do some super chats before our last segment. Talking Mud Crab. The amount of WWE in that ad, I assume you mean the Trump ad. Yeah, this was from a while ago. Sorry, I missed this when it came in. Is wild. Let's go perp walk. Hope he wears a cool bathrobe. I wonder if you'll get a perp walk on Tuesday. Russell will be there, so
I'll be there.
We will see. Courtney, thank you, Courtney, for the $5. Appreciate that. An early tip for Russell heading out to the arraignment on Tuesday. Looking forward to the footage. Thank you very much. It should be fun. We'll have a sort of edited cut of that footage for Thursday's show, so we will be playing that on Thursday. Did you see Max Blumenthal's? Thank you, Dave, for the $5. Did you see Max Blumenthal's interview with Stormy Daniels in Arizona back in 2009? He played it and talked about it the other day's Grey Zone live stream. No,
That's funny.
That is funny.
What was he interviewing her about? Her technique?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's way before the Trump days.
Before the Trump stuff. Yeah, exactly. Pure Blood, if you're still watching the bill, the Restrict Act was introduced by Mark Warner and John Thune. So one Democrat and one Republican. Dan in the Outback, $7.99. Thank you, Dan. I like your avatar there. You know, I like kangaroos. It's a feel good animal. I'm an Australian, have lived and worked in China a couple times. You guys have China wrong, especially about what is on Chinese TikTok. All right, well, that's all Russell. I don't have a
I can only go by the footage and reporting I've seen, and it is pretty bereft of twerking and the kind of ideology that we see on it here. I will say that.
All right. Thank you for the donation, though. Appreciate it. Dave, again, this smartphone social media used to numb us is what Whitney Webb talks about, Russell. Yeah, we got a recommendation for Whitney Webb last time. You guys should do a Rumble exclusive interview with her. Yeah, you're not the first person to tell us to reach out to Whitney Webb, so maybe we shall. Thank you. Sorry, my monitor volume's too loud. It's bleeding through. Isn't it interesting 2 U.S. presidents who did acting are Republicans, that Reagan was president of the Screen Actors Guild of America? Yeah, I mean, that is interesting. But, Reagan, obviously, there's a great clip in one of the Michael Moore movies. He pulled a clip of Reagan, like, smacking a woman in the face in one of his movies, stuff like that.
I remember that.
But Ronald Reagan, actually, this would be an interesting segment to cover at some point. He did those commercials for the American Medical Association against universal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so he was a hired hand, even as an actor.
Yeah, and they even had that on, like, a record.
Yeah, it was a record.
Showed that in the movie,
or whatever it was. Yeah. No, he actually recorded an anti-Medicare for all propaganda piece as an actor. All right, let's do this final piece here. Cenk Uygur recorded a video before the Nashville shooting and then a video after the Nashville shooting, which is pretty peculiar and something that we thought was worth highlighting. So Russell cut together a few different Young Turks videos, 3 in total in sequence. Do you want to set this up, what we're looking at here?
Okay, so if you remember, after the Buffalo shooting, after the Buffalo tragedy, and after several shootings after that, the media, and even within, the YouTube space, people like Young Turks, Majority Report, friend of show Kyle Kalinske, they all did stuff about how the rhetoric of the right wing and the right wing media, and particularly Tucker Carlson, was what led to this violence, was what led to this shooting, and really around Buffalo, this was a general media drum that was being beat, that the rhetoric of the right, particularly Tucker Carlson, is what caused this. It's what brought it about. in the wake of the Nashville shooting, we're not hearing any of that, in spite of the fact that there is a lot of rhetoric coming out of that quarter that could be construed as urging violence. Now, to make it clear, I didn't like that argument when it was made about Tucker, and I don't like that argument in the other direction. But what I am saying is there is a glaring difference in the way that they are analyzing the causes of this in the two cases. And nobody exemplifies that better than the crackerjack team of journalists over there at the Young Turks.
Yeah, so these are 3 videos. They're dated. The context is given as a little title card. So we will take a look right now.
It does, in fact, protect hate.
Sorry.
The First Amendment does, in fact, protect hate speech, but it does not protect certain forms of speech, including incitements toward violence. The example that gets given all the time about the limitations of the First Amendment, of course, Cenk, is you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. But before we get to more clips of Tucker Carlson essentially placing the blame on anyone other than himself, do you want to jump in?
Speech we're talking about that's problematic is incitement towards violence. That is not legal. If you want to say, look, I hate all black people, I hate Muslims, Jews, whatever, yes, you have a right to say that in America. But you do not have a right to say, now let's go kill them.
Right.
Okay, and that's the other sleight of hand. He makes it sound like, oh, everyone on the left wants to ban all speech because we're worried about incitement as speech. I'll be a little bit of a hypocrite here, but it's not. I'll explain why I'm saying it. I don't like guns. I would ban assault weapons in a second. We can go on and on about the gun control that we need in this country. And I always tell people, don't get guns. It'll make you less safe. I'm gonna make an exception here for trans people. They are actually in danger. They have had hundreds of laws passed against them. They have right-wing media ginning up fear against them 24/7. They are targeted more than any other group in America. And if anyone should get guns, it should be trans Americans, okay? Because I'm worried for them. I'm worried that the right-wing lunatics are going to attack them as they have over and over again. And by the way, it's not just right-wing lunatics, other people attack trans folks as well. They should show every dead victim of every one of these massacres. Because then you know what we'll do? We'll all throw up together and go, God damn it, that's enough. But right now, the Republicans are evil and they say, we don't care. We're not gonna do anything. In fact, if you try to do something, we're gonna make sure we tear it down. So don't tell me you're heartbroken. Don't tell me you care when you are the ones preventing any action on this.
Okay, so little different take on it there. So if you watch that whole segment they did about how Tucker's responsible for the shooting in Buffalo, one of the things that they kept calling Tucker out for was how he was baiting and switching and avoiding responsibility and shifting responsibility to other people and avoiding focus on him and the things that he said. Well, I don't think you could find a better example than saying 3 days before this shooting that trans people need to arm themselves because of the threat from the right wing. And then, and he certainly wasn't alone in trying to make this shift after that shooting. It's the Republicans and the gun laws. Let's talk about the gun laws. Let's talk about anything except the idea that there may have been rhetoric on that side that might have created a very paranoid environment in that community that might have made some people feel like they needed to go arm themselves. You literally said it on the air 3 days before this shooting that this community is under violent threat such that they need to arm themselves. So do you bear responsibility? If Tucker Carlson bears responsibility, do you bear responsibility? Do people who have ginned up that kind of almost apocalyptic rhetoric in the trans community bear any responsibility for that shooting? Because if you're going to make the one equation, I don't see how you avoid making the other.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's right. And, I always, whenever there's a shooting like this, I always am of the opinion that you can never blame people's political opinions
I
for the
agree.
shooting itself, because, of course, once you give in to the idea that violence is an inevitable outgrowth of debate or discourse, at that point, debate and discourse become impossible.
Right.
Right.
You've conceded censorship. You've conceded the core argument of the censors. That
Right.
speech is dangerous.
Right. That speech will inevitably lead to violence. And so if it inevitably leads to violence, in that sense, it is violence. It's just step one in an inevitably and sort of inescapably violent process and cycle. The other thing that's interesting about this is that you notice, and this is part of the reason, not the only reason, we obviously know the gun lobby pulls a lot of weight here. But part of the reason why I think we haven't had as successful a gun control movement in this country is because it seems like liberals and progressives keep gun control as sort of the backup issue to talk about if they can't get a marquee story somewhere else after a shooting happens, right? So if the shooting was a
If
white
they don't like the
person-
narrative. yeah.
Right. If they don't like the narrative, they fall back on, well, it's guns, even though he says after the Buffalo shooting, you didn't hear as much about guns as you heard about racism. Now, I'm not saying they're wrong to blame racism more than guns, right? But I'm just saying it's clearly not the case where you see here 3 days before he's saying trans people need to arm themselves, even though I say a few seconds earlier that you're better off not having a gun. Because numbers show you're actually
Except for
more
trans
likely
people.
to have an accident with the gun and have it hurt you or someone in your household than actually use it for self defense. Pardon me. But once the shooting happens, just a few days after, he's back on, well, now we have to front and center guns. Right. It's just this sort of sleight of hand.
Well, and so somebody in the chat, and I said it's not true. Now, I don't know if the number shifted, but at least during the pandemic and for a few years there, and it may still be true, the greatest number of hate crimes in the country were not being committed against trans people. They were being committed against Jews. Should I get armed? Should Keaton get armed? Should all the Jews be armed? Like if that's the argument you're going to make, well, they're facing a unique threat. Well, then I guess Jews need guns then. And let me tell you, you do not want Jews having guns.
Look, but
also Jews I know I wouldn't trust to change a light bulb.
This is how you create a cycle of violence, right? This is how the culture becomes more violence because, as Cenk says there, he says, well, if you feel you're under threat, you should arm yourself. Okay, well, then how does that compute?
Well,
with
and
you
you've also
saying-
conceded the conservatives argument.
Well, that's what I was just saying. Because how does that compute with saying, well, no, we need to control guns, we need to restrict guns? Because
Unless you feel
whether
threatened.
someone feels under threat or
Right.
not is completely subjective. It's unique to the individual person, right?
Right. There's a hypocrisy across the media that undermines the entire credibility of the media. And this is a big part of why I point this out. You have to remember, most people are not living in this little liberal bubble where no, we're not going to talk at all about a lot of the really violent and apocalyptic rhetoric coming out of that community. We're not going to talk about that at all the way that we do if any time this shooter is a right-wing male white. We're going to talk about all of those things as factors. We're not going to talk at all about rhetoric coming out of that movement, out of that community. We're going to immediately turn to guns. Okay, you know, part of the problem with that societal approach is people see through it. They see through it. And if you want to win people over to the cause of gun control, making it partisan like that is not helping your cause. When they see that you use it as a cudgel and as a way to avoid discussion of issues that you're not comfortable discussing, any chance that you have of broadening a consensus on gun control goes out the window because they don't trust any opinion that you offer because you so clearly are using it as a political tactic and weapon.
Yeah, I mean, what you have to do if you want to win sensible gun reform, which I'm for, right? Like, you have to, it's a long project of convincing people that they don't need them.
And you're not convincing them this way.
Right.
And
You're not convincing this way by saying there's a certain group of people who's after you. Because when Cenk Uygur says it, he may feel he's in the right for using this example in this instance, and not saying whether he is or isn't. When Tucker does that to his audience, it's equally valid in the eyes of Tucker's audience coming from Tucker as it is in Cenk's audience coming from Cenk. Right.
That's it. And I want you to do a thought experiment. What would happen if Tucker Carlson said this 3 days before the Buffalo shooting? I don't think even Tucker could have survived that.
Right.
If he had gone on the air 3 days before that happened and said, conservatives need to arm themselves. They need to be armed. He wouldn't have even had to say white. Conservatives need to arm themselves because the left, they're coming for you. They're targeting you. Even Tucker would have been pulled off the air for that. Have you heard a word about this? As far as I know, we're the only people who have covered this. We're the only, it popped up on TikTok. That's how it got on Twitter, rather. That's how it got on my radar. Nobody's covered this. Nobody's talking about this. If it were a conservative that said something like this right before a shooting, they would be crucified. That would be the end of their career. There is this double standard. And if you feel, well, there should be this double standard, because I agree with what Cenk is saying, and I don't agree with what Tucker is saying, you have lost the moral high ground, my friend. You no longer have the moral high ground. It is not that you don't believe in political violence. You just don't believe in political violence directed against people you agree with.
Yeah, and you also don't, I would say even deeper than that, you don't believe in a civil society. You don't, because a civil society allows for debate and disagreement and even prejudice, right? Like even views that you feel are vile, they come with a certain protection. That's why we have a First Amendment, because whatever views you want to express, your views themselves should not and must not subject you to violence or violent threats. Once you put in people's heads that, hey, there are people out there who hate you and they're coming after you, and so maybe you should arm up. At that point, you are setting the table, right? I mean, at that point, you're walking right up to that line of incitement. Now, to be clear, I don't think he crosses that line, because I don't think, it's fair to say that. But he
crosses it more than Tucker does.
Right. He comes closer to it than Tucker, or they have a whole laundry list of media scapegoats who they like to go after and try to get advertisers pulling the support and things like that. I mean that is just it's just a very destructive way to frame things.
Well, and not only that, very much as with the prosecution of Donald Trump. Do you really want to open this door? Is this really a door you want to open? You want to get into a knockdown, drag out brawl with the Duck Dynasty people? Really? Have you seen the left? Really? The pussy hat people are going to go fight the Duck Dynasty people? Really? That's a road you want to go down. You're comfortable going down that road. You think you're going to win in a toe-to-toe fight with those people.
Well, that's the other thing that's really gross about this, is that it's clearly just a game to so many people, right? Cenk, I don't know about Cenk's bio that much, but I would assume Cenk doesn't have a trans person living in his house. If he did, would he want a gun in his house now? Are you actually afraid that this violence is going to come for you, where you actually feel like you need to take arms? My guess is if you're afraid of having a gun in your house, you'd be afraid of having a gun in your house if you had a trans person in your house as well. You wouldn't trust that gun to protect you. You would still be afraid of the gun. You know what I mean? And so, I just think it's not real to him, and this is what we got into a little bit on our last show. And this is what Colin brought up. This is very much a rich versus poor sort of issue. Like the threat of violence, not that it never exists against rich people, but it so disproportionately affects working class and poorer people, to the point where, you know, if you live, and like I said, I don't know where these people live. I don't really care where they live, but, you know.
Sure, wherever Cenk lives, it's very nice.
Numbers don't lie, right? They tend to live in much, much safer areas where the threat of violence is not as real. But if the threat of violence is not as real, it's also, it's more this sort of abstraction, right? Like violence itself. This is why I'm anti-war as vehemently as I am, because it is such an affront to humanity. It's such an affront to civilization. It inflicts not only such pain, but such incredible trauma that, you know, I don't think, you know, like if you actually have a real sense of what it's like to suffer gun violence or lose someone to gun violence, or even come close to losing someone to gun violence, or, you know, violence of any nature, pardon me, you wouldn't play fast and loose with this. Oh, arm up because people are coming after you. It's like, why? It's just, like I said, it's just a very, very destructive thing. You can't have a healthy, democratic, free society in which people are this paranoid, right? And view each other as such shady, untrustworthy figures who are a constant threat to them.
Well, and Cenk is a real piece of work at this point. Cenk, if he ever had any integrity, lost it a long time ago. He, at this point, is just a dancing monkey. You know, he just goes on there and goes on these clearly inauthentic rants to look like he's really impassioned about it. He's a performer. He's a monkey. He's doing a circus act up there. You know, whenever something that will really outrage a certain portion of their viewing base comes up, he always puts on this show. The thing he did with the guns. And there was more of that, where he works himself up. These politicians don't care about us. You know, it's an act. It's an act. He's a performer. He's trying to put asses in the seats. And I think what happened with this, and this is part of the point that I'm making, because we do not penalize the speech of activists from that community the way we would conservatives, that speech has been getting increasingly inflammatory and incendiary and irresponsible. And Cenk, it not occurring to him, hey, you know, maybe this isn't going to age well, just went for it. He just went for it. He just went for the climate. He was attuned to the climate of this apocalyptic rhetoric, and he jumped out in front of that parade.
Right.
And then, instead of taking responsibility for it, he deflected by putting on the Cenk show. Oh, these Republicans and the guns. Right. And look, he's right that he's not going to face consequences, because who's covering this? Just us.
Right. Some in the right-wing media, you know, called attention. I think Charlie Kirk tweeted out the video, but nobody who's actually in a position to, you know,
destroy his network. Yes.
Right. Absolutely. All right. Well, we'll have more on topics sort of related to this in the coming weeks. We have some plans to put together some more formal pieces on some of these issues that we've been talking about. But I think we've got to wrap for tonight. What do you think?
I think so. I think that's a show.
I think that's a show.
The internet held up.
The internet held up. We held up. I know it's been an exhausting few days for both of us, so I'm a little surprised we held up. But we had some help from Tusker.
4 cups of coffee, man.
Yeah, see, I didn't drink any coffee since this morning. I should have had some.
I had a lot of caffeine.
I'm pretty beat. I got to be honest with you folks. Tusker helped us out with the show and also gave us another $5. Thank you, Tusker, so much. You guys should ask Norm Finkelstein to come on your show and discuss.
Yeah, I like that dude. I've seen some of his stuff.
Yeah, let's do it. Can't think of a better duo to dig into the content of the book. All right, well, I will look into that, and we will reach out, because I'm pretty sure Norm would come on. Give every teacher a javelin missile. Give them the old Patriot battery, right?
Yeah.
All right. Is this everything here? Is that everything we got? All right, folks. Well, thank you so much for sticking with us tonight. Thank you for bearing with us early in the show with those technical issues.
Yeah, sorry about that. We had screaming kids.
Screaming
We had
kids.
broken internet connections. Yeah.
Oy, the curse of
That
Monaco.
Yeah. We never should have done that bit.
Yeah, the bit on Monaco.
As Yiddish ghost is cursing us ever since. It's
nice.
violent Hebraic shouting in the background of the show.
Yeah, exactly. I got to listen back to that to see how bad it was. But I thought to it because I could tell, because I remember Amanda was telling the kids, all right, you got to sleep in your bed tonight because you weren't good. And so she was going to discipline them by making them sleep in their beds. Come to think, I can't think of why they've been sleeping in our beds the past few nights. I don't know why. They were sick for a while. And so when they're sick, it's easier because when they wake up coughing and stuff, you don't have to get up and go bring them in. I can't even think of why they've been in our beds past few nights, but I think they're in our bed now because
so it's like
she had to
dogs.
cave
You
in.
can't let them get in that habit.
No, they were just breaking that. Well, they were sick for a long time. They had some weird cold that just lasted forever. It wasn't the plague, but it was just this like lingering cold. And so we had them in our beds for like a couple of weeks straight, and then we had them out, and we had them back situated in their rooms, and then I forget. It's honestly slipping my mind. As you can tell, brain is a little frayed tonight, folks. But that's because it's been a long weekend, a long few days. But thank you guys so much for hanging out in here tonight. We had a very big crowd in here for the whole show. So we are humbled by that. Thank you. We have a busy few days ahead of us, too.
We do.
We're on with Sabby Sabs Tuesday nights. Russell's going to be down outside the courthouse, so if you're in New York and you want to go say hello.
I will be on Sabby if I don't get swept up in a mass arrest.
Yeah, right, exactly. Right, exactly. So assuming he's a free man on Tuesday night, he will be on with Sabby Sabs as well as myself. And then Wednesday, we are going to be in production for our first documentary film, and then we're going to be back here Thursday. So no rest for the weary. Busy week ahead. But thank you guys very much for your support. Thank you for our super chats. Thank you to our patrons and paid Substack subscribers. We're going to come out with, we should have done it for this evening's show, but we'll definitely have it ready for Thursday's show. We're going to announce some new Patreon tiers and perks related to the documentary. We'll definitely be, releasing some behind-the-scenes footage and extra interview footage from the film. And at some point, we will have a sort of focus group screening for patrons only. We'll screen a cut of the film when we have it. We'll do a live stream of it just for patrons and paid Substack subscribers, and we'll get your feedback, and you'll get to put your input on there. And all patrons will get a special thanks credit in the movie for sure.
All right. Cool.
All righty, everybody. Thank you very much.
And you'll get a cameo in one of our sketches.
Yeah, right. And a cameo in our sketch. Pay to play, baby, as they say.
That's right.
Thank you guys very much for watching. We will see you on the Sabby Sab Show Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. Be there. That'll be a lot of fun. We're looking forward to that. We'll see you back here on this channel Thursday. Be safe. Be well. Until then, we'll see you next time.
Courage.
Please clap.